And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention, roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. And of course, it's Monday morning with back with content. New York City, nationwide, anything with politics and public safety, political, any optics that infects or injects into law enforcement, and more. So, I've got a great topic for you. An NYPD sergeant takes on an aggressive raccoon and shoots him dead. Pretty interesting story. So, we've named him Pookie. So I guess we're going to go in and jump into Pookie. But before I do that, I hope you guys had a good weekend. Hope everyone had a good weekend. I see the chat is already blown up. I appreciate it. Thank you, friends, listeners. We appreciate it. Highly recommend. Just want to say this weekend, it was my birthday. So I decided I treated myself and I took the basic safety riding course with Harley Davidson. I highly recommend it. I did this one in Vegas. If you're a bike rider, if you're not, I highly recommend you do it. They teach you how to weave in and out of cones and just some good safety stuff, how to look over your head, how to do U-turns in small boxes. Really cool course. It's 2.5 days. I highly recommend it. And if you take that course and you buy a bike, I'm not sponsoring them, just saying them. But if you buy a bike, they'll actually the course will be free because they'll take that off the bike. But awesome, I highly recommend it. The reason why I say it, I think everyone has phobias. I know, John, you always tell me you have phobias of heights. I'm not scared of much, but for some reason, I've always had a phobia to ride a bike. I ride bicycles and scooters, but a motorcycle, I was definitely afraid. And I was going through some serious anxiety when I jumped on the bike. But after a little bit, man, it felt great. I love it. It was outstanding. So I plan on getting something soon. So shout out to everybody. If you're into it, and if you've never rode a bike, I highly recommend you do it. You'll get over your anxieties, and it would be a lot of fun. So good morning, John. Let's get into it. Let's talk about Pookie. Marlon, good morning. Let's do it.
What's up, guys? Before we get started, just got a little sad news from yesterday. Retired Sergeant Robert McGovern, 60 years old, passed away while shoveling snow. So we know there's a lot of snow out there on the ground. Be careful. Protect your heart. Protect your health. Look, we're all getting up there in age. So, get these kids. Pay somebody. If you got to pay your landscapers, whatever it is. Really not worth it. Even the snowblower, dude. The snowblower is like, I found my snowblower to be more work than to just shovel.
Was it working?
So
was your snowblower working?
I think I had a great one too. It had like front wheel drive too, so the thing would move. It would move on its own, but it was a pain in the ass. Like, when you're getting up there in age, you shouldn't be shoveling snow. I still consistently tell my neighbors in New York this, but they don't listen to me. I'm like, don't go out there, pay somebody, rest in peace to Sergeant Robert McGovern. We also lost police officer Sean Kennan yesterday, active duty police officer. I don't know the circumstances surrounding his death. I just know a lot of people sent it to me. They said that Sean was a great guy. So, very sad to hear the news, very sad to hear that he didn't make it to retirement. So rest in peace to police officer Sean McKinnon. What's up, Marlon? What's going down, brother?
Morning, fellas. Morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing all right. If you had to spend 6 hours like me out there shoveling yesterday, drop the time in the chat. It's still even after that, I think we still got like another 4 inches over here. So I'm gonna have to do some more of that after this. But like John said, if you guys that are older, just take it easy out there with the shoveling. Yeah. But we got a lot to talk about this morning. The raccoon shooting is the first topic, and at first glance, the word we got was it was a kind of a reckless shooting. Basically, it was done for amusement, but it didn't turn out that way. But still, I think the fact that the sergeant was stripped of his gun and shield, even though I know it's protocol, but it's a little silly But we'll get into that as we go around, and I think it's going to be another lively discussion this morning.
You know, I'm glad that we're talking about this poor sergeant that lost his life. You know, may he rest in peace. And we also lost a police officer. But yeah, 92 Charlie put it here. It's very true. You know, kids today don't knock on doors like they did when we were young. It's just a different generation. When we were young, I know for me particularly, growing up in New York, we used to call it money falling from the sky. You know, it was snowing. I knew I would go to all the old ladies' houses and shovel for them, and we would just make a whole day pocket full of cash. So, unfortunately, it's not there. But if you're not, you know, if you're older and if you're not, you know, constantly maintaining your fitness, don't just get up and shovel. It's a daunting task. Even if you are maintaining a high level of fitness, it's still going to affect you. It's just you're using different muscles. You're all bundled up in the cold, and then you start sweating. It's just not a good combination. So please take care of yourselves. And if you are going to shovel, take it slow. Take it slow. I know myself. It's easy to say. I can't help it. You know, when I was in New York, if I would shovel, I would just go like a madman and try to get it done and help other people. So be careful out there. So here we go. We're talking about Pookie. You know, it's interesting, right? Law enforcement nationwide, especially the NYPD, that's where we worked. There is actually protocol when you're faced with an animal that could be aggressive. And there's a different threshold and tolerance for using a firearm towards an animal than a person, right? Because we often say that with a person, right, it has to be immediate threat of death in order to utilize your firearm. But it's far different threshold and tolerance when it comes to an animal, right? You know, there's an old saying where people always joke around, right? You would talk about the test, right? The use of force test. It was a 10-question test in the police academy, and it was shoot or don't shoot. You guys remember the shoot or don't shoot test? So everybody always jokes around, shoot the dog. One of the answers is shoot the dog, right? So if you're faced with an animal that is aggressive and there's potential for physical harm, doesn't have to be immediate threat of death. You can use your firearm. You know, there's been some banter. This has been kind of funny behind it because he did shoot a raccoon. So, but listen, sometimes it's necessary, right? Apparently, this raccoon was aggressive, charging towards beachgoers, and the sergeant utilized the tools at his discretion. I think it's absolutely silly that his firearm was taken for a full-out investigation. You know, is it an animal? I know there's a lot of animal activists out there. I don't know if ELF is getting involved or anything like that, but listen, the sergeant did what he had to do. John, what are your thoughts? What do you think about the use of force in the police department and as far as the different threshold that we had as far as shooting a person and shooting an animal?
Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of people weigh in on things that they just don't understand, and they don't even put themselves in the situation, and they just run with, you know, with sensationalized headlines. Oh, this sergeant and him and his guys wanted to kill a raccoon for fun. First of all, I got that rumor about 1,000 times, and I didn't believe it every time I read it. I was like, this is look, cops do dumb shit. I'm not going to say, I'll be the first. I mean, we've called out so much dumb shit on here that it's like, but just throughout your careers, you've seen cops, you've seen sergeants, you've seen lieutenants do the dumbest things, right? Like things you could write a cartoon off of. And people would be like, that didn't happen. You're like, no, that happened. I was right there. Like, you know, but like to sit there and say in this day and age that cops are going to be out in public shooting a raccoon for fun. I mean, come on. Who believes that? Nobody. I mean, you know what I mean? You'd have to be really mentally deranged to do that. And I don't think you would have made it to 18 years. So I just want to get that off the bat first. So like, I didn't believe that at all. Obviously it comes out that, you know, an aggressive raccoon was attacking people on in the Rockaways in the 100th precinct, right near the concrete boardwalk, a little bit off into the, you know, a little bit off into the sand area. And we'll play the video. I mean, it's a short clip. They don't show you what happens before. It doesn't show you what happens after. It just shows the sergeant shooting the raccoon. The sergeant has been stripped of his gun and his shield since. And I got to be honest, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think this is the reason people are afraid to act. This is why people don't do anything in the New York City Police Department, because we'll go through the video, but I'm just gonna put myself in the situation. And by the way, I've been in these situations a lot where we've gotten 911 calls for rabid raccoons or aggressive raccoons. And I don't think anybody should lose their gun and shield or be modified if they didn't follow the patrol guide of a dangerous animal to absolute T. I think it's absolutely ridiculous where the police department's heading with this, and I think it shows that now when people encounter dangerous animals, they're really going to be afraid to act, and it could potentially cause harm to the public or themselves. And like, it's an animal. I love animals. I love dogs. I like birds. I like raccoons. I like all of them. I do. But it is what it is. When you feel endangered, it is what it is. Like, we got a call one time of a rabid raccoon in Staten Island, and these two rookies murdered the raccoon, like legitimately murdered it with a broom handle. And the lady was thankful. She gave them a garbage bag. They put it in the garbage bag. They threw it out in the garbage, and the job was marked a 91 non-crime corrected. Now, those cops will remain nameless, and I won't say exactly where that happened, but that's exactly what happened, and it wasn't a big deal, and that's what happened. They got called to a 911 call or came across this animal, and they handled it. Was it perfectly? Could it be handled better? Yeah, maybe make a little video about how you can handle dangerous animals a little bit better, but nobody should lose their gun and shield over this. Ridiculous.
Yeah, it's silly, I think now I don't know the exact procedure because again I was a cop, I don't know the exact procedure in terms of like supervisors and the duty captain, but I honestly think that sergeant should have been you should have been put back on patrol and finish your day, go top off some rounds and finish off your day on patrol, not have your gun and shield stripped and then we got to bring force investigation. Give me a break here. Yeah. What a waste of resources and department manpower. These are the silly things that again, we talk about that NYPD does that are like, it's like most other departments, especially those that deal with this stuff all the time. It's normal, you have a rabid raccoon, a rabid wild animal. Okay. That's threatening people in that area. You stop the threat and then you go back on patrol. This to me, the fact that they make a big deal out of it just shows you the state of the NYPD and how we have a big resource management issue. And that stems from manpower all the way down to silliness on the local level like that.
I think that New York State has a problem as a whole, but especially New York City. And if we drill down and focus, especially the NYPD, when it comes to firearms, and I never really understood it until I started to travel the country. I was in the Marines, but it was different, right? When I was in the Marines, I was at military installations where, the firearms all over the place. It was different, right? I spent a lot of my time there. But, you go out in town, but it's different now. Now that I'm retired, I've been traveling for 3.5 years. I've been all over the country, and I realized New York is not really America. You don't really feel the Second Amendment in New York. And I've traveled through most states now. I've been through almost every state traveling through. And some of the states where just it's not about do you have a firearm, it's how many firearms do you have. And it feels so normal to be in some states now where people just walk around, it's open carry, and most people have firearms, and it's not a big deal. It's just another tool. Some people, people carry wallets, people carry purses, and in a lot of states, people carry guns, and it's not a big deal. It's how many guns do you have? And I believe in New York, we've really demonized a gun. Like, it's this big deal. Especially for a cop in New York City, where a gun it is a tool. A cop has many guns many tools at their disposal, and one of those tools is a gun. But we make such a big deal because he shot a raccoon. And what other tools was he supposed to use? Like, what is that cop supposed to do? Is he supposed to grab a broom handle and start or a garbage can and try to trap the raccoon? I mean, if you really think about it, there's not much training in the NYPD if you call for animal control and wait for animal control. Like, what are you really doing? This raccoon is charging people. You're going to let the raccoon bite someone? What are you going to do? It's just a tool like anything else, but we make such a big deal that if a cop, Even cops feel it themselves. Like if they touch their gun, if they take it out, they feel like they've created another threshold at a different level. It's a tool, just like your pepper spray, your baton, or your mouth talking to people. It's just a tool. We make such a big deal. I don't see why there's a full-out investigation. What happened? There's an aggressive raccoon. You shot the raccoon dead. We got body on camera. Great job. Continue your day. But this is insane that to take the firearm and hold a full investigation. You're absolutely right, Marlon. I believe that puts other beachgoers and other residents in danger, because if there's another beachgoer and there's another animal, or if there's something going on in a park, and if there's a rabid animal and there's a cop that's going to be hesitant to take action. Listen, I love animals. I rescued many pit bulls. I love animals, but there are good people, right? And there are bad people. There are good animals and there are bad animals, and they have to be dealt with.
Yeah, so let's get in the video, then we'll get into procedure, and then we're going to move over to Minnesota and the shooting there. We're going to break down that video because there's a lot of garbage coming out, both sides, right and left. I don't think anyone knows what they're talking about. But welcome in. I'm not sure if you need any, if you like us, we could promote the show for the Racoon, so you can see if there's a class action that you could get together for all the bias that the NYPD has towards raccoons. So let us know. So here's the video. Here's where it comes out. This is from the 100th precinct. You see they're right off the concrete boardwalk in Rockaway. Great boardwalk, actually, over there. I like it over there. But those waters are scary, man. In Rockaway, very dangerous. Got to be very careful over there. You notice most surfers will be out there. That's where people go surfing. Those tides, those rip tides are very dangerous. That's straight ocean right there. So as much as I love the beach, that's one of the ones I would avoid going swimming in, to be honest with you. And I'm a pretty good swimmer, So, all right. So here's the video. It's real short. It's 55 seconds. Here we go.
One of the Charlie too. Show me with 2 shots fired here at the Racoon. Show me with shots fired here on the boardwalk at the Racoon.
All right. So that's it. So 3 shots, right? 3 shots at the Racoon. Here's the thing, right? Once you do any type of injury to an animal, is it truly humane to sit there and not kill the animal after that? I mean, we had another issue in the 123 one time with a cop who came across a deer that was hit by a car, and he shot the deer. And nothing came of it, but like Parks was trying to make a big deal out of it. Parks actually came in the precinct talking about no city cop's going to shoot this. I'm like, dude, get out of the precinct. Get out of here. Like nobody wants to hear your garbage. Only we could shoot it. This is our jurisdiction. You see an animal hurt at that point. It is what it is. So I don't really see anything wrong with it. We don't know what led up to it, other than we know that there were reports that this thing was going after people and trying to bite people. So I mean, it is what it is. That. What do you guys think? Anything on the video that you saw?
Oh, I didn't see anything really egregious on there. I mean, it is what it is. Like I said, that should have been wrapped up as soon as the duty captain came. And again, sergeant should have been told to top up and get back on patrol. Maybe take a go grab a coffee, take a quick break if you want, and get back on patrol. It is what it is. You had a potentially rabid animal that's wild, and we're not talking a domesticated animal here that is intelligent. We had a rabid animal that's a threat to the neighborhood, and you had a cops responding to a 911 call, and they did what they're trained to do, which is stop a threat. So I think it should have been case closed, and they should have been got back to work, and instead of wasting resources and the people's time. But as we said before, like you're getting a generation of you know a generation that has been beaten down by a lot of things in the job, and from the DA's office, from the politicians themselves, from the media, and everybody's scared to make an executive decision, and everyone has to go do exactly as been told of them by the patrol guide, instead of thinking on their own. And this is what you get. And I'm curious what the city see. What people aren't thinking about here is that if more jobs get done this way, this is more costs that are adding up for the city, when the city should really be trying to find efficiencies right now, because again, Mamdani has a 2 billion deficit for this year, and this fiscal year isn't over until I believe June, and he has a $12 billion deficit for the following year. So do you really need the added overtime of FID um, coming here and investigating, and doing jumping through all the hoops? No, you don't. You need guys getting back on patrol and cutting the BS. Instead, that's not what's happening here. So I'm curious, as we go forward, and as the reality of that fiscal situation really hits, what they're gonna do. I think just from this episode alone, you might see a different reaction next time.
Yeah, Nine Inch Nails, Nin, whatever, Nincompoop is giving his advice here, but we really taking it. Well, at least the cops didn't have to run 1.5 miles to get to the raccoon. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. But I think the raccoon has some black stripes on it, so this might be racist. The cops are racist. Maybe that's what it is.
I think so.
Right? I just think. Listen, first of all, I mean, I get it, right? According to the NYPD patrol guide, if someone's involved in a shooting with another person, they're supposed to have 3 days without their firearms, where they go to the borough, and it's kind of a cool down period. And even if it's justified, just a cool down period. Now, I get that, because if you're involved in a shooting, and even if you shoot someone that's a bad person or violent, all right, you're still shooting another person, another human being. That's not something easy to do, right? The fact that a cop has to do that, or military, law enforcement, nationwide or anywhere in the country, anyone serving overseas, to take the life of another, just even shoot at someone else, is not an easy task, right? Something that could sit heavily on someone's mind and psychological damage. Do we feel sorry for animals? Yeah, I would have a really tough time shooting a dog. But a raccoon, yes. Listen, some of them are cute, but a rabid raccoon, who's, and Mullen's right, who's not a domesticated animal, that's out in the wild, that is potentially biting beachgoers, right? Maybe there's kids there. The cops did what they had to do. And the removal of the firearms, which potentially could be an investigation, I don't know what they're going to do, but the point to me is, okay, if you're going to have an investigation, and tell the cops what other avenues could they have taken? Like, what are their options? I mean, there's not much training in the law enforcement. Have you guys ever had training on how to handle a raccoon? I haven't, right? All they tell you is just to call animal control. Great. What do you do when you're in the 100th precinct in an open area on a beach and there's a rabid raccoon running around? What do you do? Right? What training is there? I personally, I never had any training. I never had anyone's call animal control. That's great. So while we're waiting for animal control, what are we supposed to do? I have no issues with what they did. I just think it's funny that they put over shots fired. I can only imagine what people were hearing. They're probably going nuts. Who's not paying attention, realizing that they're saying they shot a raccoon? That probably caused some mass hysteria too.
Yeah.
I think in a case like that, I would have probably called the precinct, or I would have just called the dispatcher on the phone. I wouldn't have put that one on the radio, only because you're going to cause some mass hysteria and people don't realize you're talking about a raccoon. Other than that, I have no issues with it. What's the problem here? But please tell us, NYPD, what is the training to handle a raccoon? I don't know. I never had it. I remember one time Valachi, my brother, one of my first partners, we had a raccoon one time that was rabid. It was somewhere in Port Richmond. Valachi, I hope you remember this. So we go up to the house, and the raccoon is like, on top of the door, on the saddle at the door, and the people were terrified and the raccoon wouldn't go down, and the dog that they had was barking at the raccoon, and it looked like the raccoon was laughing. He was kept pawing away the raccoon, had some nasty nails. I remember me and Valachi, what do we do with this thing? Somehow we managed to get a broom. I remember, if I had the broom, whacking at the raccoon, and Valachi had a garbage can, and we managed to get the raccoon and put the garbage excuse me. I got a little cold this weekend, but we had a garbage can and we put it over the raccoon. I don't remember what we did. I think we just we just threw it somewhere. But other than that, what are you supposed to do? I mean, we had the garbage can there, but there was no training. We just did it. John, you had training? Marlon, I did it.
Nah, dude, I remember we rolled up one time. We just got breakfast and we were sitting in an unmarked, and we were just about to eat, and this dude comes walking up and he goes, "Yo, you guys cops?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" And he goes, "There's two dogs fighting." He goes, "There's two dogs fighting down the block." So we go down the block, and it's this old lady with a cane. She's got a Shar-Pei, which is in the terrier family, and other guy with a pit bull, and his pit bull broke out of the yard. Right. And the Shar-Pei and the pit bull are just fighting each other. Right. And the Shar-Pei is holding its own. They're not but you could tell they want to hurt each other. The pit bull wants to hurt the Shar-Pei, and the Shar-Pei is now defending itself. So I took out my mace. I tried to rip the pit bull off, but I couldn't do it. And then I was like, shit. And my partner was about to shoot it. And I'm like, no, chill. And I took my mace out and I sprayed the dog. I sprayed both of them. I just kept spraying them and spraying them and spraying them. I emptied the whole thing, and they kept going. And then a few minutes later, they both break up, right? They weren't on each other. They were just doing trying to get each other's necks. And they both break up and they go off into different directions. And the old lady who owned the Shar-Pei was so mad at me. She's like, "It wasn't my dog that started it." And she took her cane and she threw it right at me. And it binged me off my face and off my chest. And I'm like, "What are you, insane?" And I yell at her. I was like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" But I laugh it off, right? I don't do
those old ladies.
She chucked a cane, hit me right in the face. It hit my back and everything. But anyway, long story short, scene calms down. I was like, "Look, do me a favor. Both of you go to a different vet or whatever. You can take the vet to get checked out." The dogs were fine. Nothing, there was no damage to either dog other than they got maced, but the dogs were fine. But I remember I called my sergeant. I'm like, "Yo, what do I do? I just maced the shit out of these two dogs." I told him to go to the vet. He's like, "Nah, don't worry about it. Just do a memo book entry. You're good." And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. So then I'm like, it was before I started studying. So I was like, let me see anyway what the hell we're supposed to do. So I would look at the procedure, and the procedure's you got to do an animal bite form. You got to call animal care and control to get a number, all this other shit. So I call him back. I'm like, "Yo, I just read the procedure. It's saying," he's like, "Bro, if you want to do it, do it." And I'm like, nah, I'm good. I was like, "Don't worry about it." I was like, don't worry about it. And I was like, but it's so stupid. And then the next time we encountered a situation where we had to do that, we couldn't even get animal control on the phone. You know what I mean? So it was a joke. I was like, this is so stupid. So no one really knows how to handle it. Look, I could see you being upset that he discharged the firearm. I see Chief Lukash in the chat. He said, well, he did let 3 bullets go. He's in a public area, 3 rounds go. It could possibly endanger other people. And I totally get what you're saying. It doesn't look great. It probably wasn't the proper way to handle it. I'll sit there and say, but nothing came of it, other than the raccoon. There was nobody else injured, nobody else got hurt. So why really take it at that point any further, other than just, are you an idiot? Don't ever do that again, because, the other thing is there could be criminal liability if you really look into it. And, obviously there's administrative liability already that we're putting on this guy. And I personally think it was unnecessary. It really was a non-issue, and it's just something that again exposes what Eric said is like cops really aren't well trained. I mean, we're city cops. We're not really well trained into how to deal with dangerous animals. I mean, it's just yet another weak spot that we have, and I think most cops have that. I think like if you work in the 123 or you work in Central Park, well, 123 10 years ago maybe, but not now. You know, now it's all covered. But if you work in Central Park or you work in an area where there's a lot of parkland, maybe you might have experienced more of this. But if you don't have senior guys on patrol to tell you how to handle it, or sergeants that have been in the precinct a long time, or lieutenants, they're not really going to know what to do. So I'm not saying the procedure is terrible, but it's 4 pages long. You know, it's 4 pages long. And basically at the end of the day, it's telling you that, you know, there's to do an animal bite reform, dangerous animal form. And it literally listed here for the purpose of this procedure, dangerous animal shall mean any animal which menaces, threatens, attacks, or bites a person. A dangerous animal can be a wild animal, which is defined by any animal naturally inclined to do harm. So, and Eric had touched on it earlier, right? What the threshold to shoot an individual is you're in fear of serious physical death or injury to yourself or to another, right? So that's the threshold when we're talking about use of force against when we're talking about use of force against an individual. When we're talking about use of force against an animal, it's fear of physical injury. That's it. Physical injury. What's a physical injury? Is a physical injury a raccoon could have scratched me? The raccoon could have bit me. The raccoon could have scratched Marlon. It could have bit Marlon. That's it. It's physical injury. So the threshold was there, right? It was acting and menacing. That's it. You know, people are afraid. It looks like it's going to attack. Most people don't know how to read raccoons correctly. I don't, you know.
You think the raccoon was vaccinated?
Yeah, you like, dude, you just really don't know. Like some of the thing is, like, some of these raccoons are really like friendly with humans, and like as a human that's not friendly with raccoons, you might have a different reaction to that. So again, I think Graham versus Connor, which we're going to talk about later, plays into even here. What did the officer perceive at the time when he discharged his firearm? And I think by all means, when we're talking just fear of physical injury, I mean, that threshold was there. I really got nothing else to say on it. I think, look, put out a training, give the guy a slap on the wrist, let him go about his life. This is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm gonna say we don't get specifically trained on raccoons, but you're trained to, you know, shoot a firearm, right? And you're trained to know to, you know, if there's a danger to the public, that's your job is to stop the threat, you know, and you know, you're trained to respond to a 911 call and to stop the threat. And I think you don't necessarily also have to be in a precinct or a command in the city that's in, say, a woodlands or a wooded area, because I've dealt with raccoons in the 7-7, and the 7-7 is you know, doesn't get more urban than that, you know. So I think regardless of where you are in the city, you're gonna have to deal with raccoons. I also dealt with it in the 3-3 when I did that COVID coverage, you know. So it doesn't matter where you are. But I just think you know, New York has gotten real soft, you know, as a society. We've gotten real soft, you know. I mean, the fact that I even got calls for those raccoons, to be honest, is kind of stupid, because the raccoons weren't bothering anybody. It's just the hipsters. They got, you know, God forbid the raccoon is crawling on their fire escape. The window is closed. The raccoon's crawling on the fire escape, so you got to call police for that, you know. In the other call, the raccoon wasn't even near their building. They just saw the raccoon with its offspring on some adjacent building, and they wanted to call the cops for it. You know, I'm like, what do you want us to do? Get a ladder and go up there, and then, you know, I mean, the thing is, we've gotten so soft as a society that it's like we take, you know, this is how you get to the sergeant being modified right now, and them taking this as a legitimate police involved shooting. You know, it's stupid. It's completely stupid. You know, there should be some
Shout out.
provisions in there to
Go ahead.
cut the fat basically, and get rid of all the wasteful, the unnecessary regulation in that patrol guide. Okay, they shouldn't be treated the same as treating shooting a domesticated animal in a say in a dwelling, or a police involved shooting that involves a human. It should not be treated the same way. A rabid animal, you have enough right there to just, you know, close it out, and that's that.
Shout out to brother Rob Lukash. This is hilarious, but it's true. He said the shooting was excessive force and racist. We know what lawyer who his family is hiring. Yeah, we can figure that one out. You know,
It's a class action, Rob.
class action lawsuit. Yeah, like I said, I think that there's really no training. There's really no apparatus for a cop that encounters a rabid animal, whether it's a raccoon, a rat, or something else. You don't have a cage in your car. There's no noose in your car. You don't have any of those tools at your accessibility. ESU, as Rob Lukash knows, could be on the other side of Queens, could be far away. It could be a long time till they get there. Animal control, good luck waiting on them. Cop has to take action. There's little to no training, and most of them is exactly that. We grew up in an urban area. We're not knowledgeable on rabid animals. That there's not extensive training on that, if any. So most of us don't know what to do. I personally, I don't know what to do with a rabid raccoon. I know I've cornered them with garbage cans and brooms, and it looked quite silly. I probably, you know, if back then, you know, people were filming, but not as much, you know, when we first got on the job. But right now, you know, if I was a brand new rookie cop, it would probably be silly while someone's filming, watch me whack a raccoon with a broom and trying to get it in a garbage can. I mean, we look like clowns. It looks silly. I have no issues with this. I get it. You know, we can't shoot where there's potentially people. We're in a metropolis. But the NYPD is the best and most restrained when it comes to being aware and the situation awareness of the metropolis and understanding its voluminous and that there could be people in harm's way. So I'm sure the cops made sure that no one was in the path of the firearm. I mean, you could see on the video, it didn't appear to be that way either. But again, there's no training. There's zero training. There's nothing in your car. You're in a patrol car. You're not opening up the trunk, and there's going to be a noose there or a cage. Good luck if there is. But I think the bottom line is, listen, hey, you shot a raccoon. You saved some people today. All right, guys, thank you. Go have lunch. Cool down for a minute. Go back out there. What's the big deal? But everybody's, oh, because it's a gun. Yeah, it's a gun. It's a tool like anything else. Would you rather the cop had went over with a knife and start stabbing him? I mean, how silly is that? It's just silly. What do you want the cop to do? They did what they had to do. That should be it. That should be it.
Yeah, you give a cop a gun and tell him to stop a threat, and now you like crucify him when he does his job like you told him to. Yeah.
What about the metal pipe, the expandable pipe that they give you? God forbid you use that, right? Oh yeah, no, don't use that thing. But, you know, we just gave it to you for looks, you know, because it sounds cool when it comes out. It's like, yeah, well, sometimes people don't believe you, you know. And here it is. Here's the end of the order, and I think this is the end of this. Even this is because it's actually a ridiculous conversation, and it's really. You know, and people make it more ridiculous, and cops make it more ridiculous. It's like, you know, it's just, I was watching cops say this guy should be fired. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, like I'm like, was it stupid? I mean, he should probably get like for the rest of his career, he should probably have some funny shit on his lockup. But you know what I mean? But like, what are we talking about here? You know what I mean? Like, this is ridiculous. You know, the guy just got promoted to sergeant. I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, this is not anything bad. Like, this is not anything crazy that happened here. You know, and like Eric said, if he would have took the broomstick and killed the raccoon, we wouldn't even be sitting here talking about it. It wouldn't even have made the news. You know, so it's like, no, just because he used a gun, though. You know, it's like, and nobody was there, and nothing happened. Like a raccoon got killed. But here's the order right here, and this is what I think they're holding his feet to the fire on. This is on the 4th page of 221. Oh no, whatever. This is a patrol guide procedure. I'll give you the number, but whatever. But this is on the bottom of that order, right? It's the use of physical force against any animal will be used only to the extent that such force is necessary to prevent harm or injury to such animal, other animals, or persons. So injury, that's all you're looking to prevent, harm or injury, right? As per Patrol Guide 22101, force guidelines, uniform member shall not discharge a firearm at a dog or any other animal except to protect a member or another person present from imminent physical injury. And there is no opportunity to retreat or other reasonable means necessary. So, that's like such an ambiguous statement, right? Because think about that. What they're saying to you is, oh, yeah, we don't want anyone to get bit, and we want you to do your job, and we're going to send you to this 911 call. But if you have the opportunity to run away, do it. But, what happens if they back off and that raccoon runs and bites a little girl in his face? What are we going to be doing here? I know what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be sitting here saying, well, they were confronted with this dangerous animal and they should have put it down. And the rest of you are going to be saying that. Oh, they didn't do their job. Oh, what did they do? Right? So, these situations are so fluid and you have to act in the moment. And then again, it goes on to, before using deadly physical force, every attempt will be made to use other reasonable means to contain threats from dangerous animal. What are you doing on an open beach on an animal that's super fast, that's right in front of you? And then once you shot it the one time, anyone ever see animal die? It's like, I'm not a hunter, but I'll tell you right now, if I saw an animal dying, I'm putting it down, and I've done it. Maybe not with my firearm, but it's excruciating to watch an animal die, listen to them scream in pain. So I don't blame the second and third shot. I really don't. In those instances where a uniformed member of service develop information to indicate a dangerous dog will be encountered at a particular location, an apartment where a warrant is forced, ESU K9 team should be conferred with for their assistance. Right. So this is all in. This is Patrol Guide 21433, right? So, and that'll cover this whole instance of dangerous animal. But I think at the end of the day, we're just going too insane about this. Like the sergeant should get it talking to. You should train your members, because I guarantee if you do a survey right now, no one really knows what they should or should have done. You're going to get all over the board that he should be fired, or or it was perfectly fine. No one's real, and no one's going to be able to spell that order out for you unless they just recently studied for the sergeant test, and you didn't manipulate the answers to help them pass.
Yeah. There was another video floating around social media of a shooting in I think it's from 2024 of I don't know where this cop is or what state they are, but they're unloading like maybe 7 rounds into a rabid raccoon, and you see the animal is still coming at them, and it's still alive, moving around. So I don't have an issue at all with them unloading 3 rounds into it. And in fact, I'm surprised they didn't do more, because if it was me, I'm probably gonna drop 3 more rounds in it just to make sure it's dead. And again, it's you have a rabid animal. Now, the thing is, a lot of old school guys, what they would have done is they might have just scared the animal away, have the animal run away. Oh, okay, 90Z, 90X, we're going back on patrol. But here's something for you to think about, though, right? This isn't the old days, okay? Cops now have body cameras. The job is tracking where you are at all times, okay? If that rabid animal runs off and were to bite somebody later on, okay, the odds are likely they may track it, especially if it happens in the same command. They're gonna backtrack and figure out what happened, and we're headed to a future where it doesn't take somebody to backtrack and figure it out. All it'll take is the AI to do it itself. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make here is that the cops did their job, and the boss did his job, and he stopped the threat, and he closed out the job. He didn't kick the can down the road for somebody else to handle it, and for the raccoon to go injure somebody else. Okay, he stopped the threat right there, then and there, and that was it. And that's exactly what he should have done instead of kick the can down the road for it to be somebody else's problem and for it to harm, you know, maybe it could have harmed somebody's kid, you know. So I have no issues with the amount of rounds he fired at all that were fired.
You gotta admit though, even though I think the cop, I have no issues with the cop taking action, but these things are hilarious with the raccoon with the gun in the hand. They are hilarious though. It's pretty funny. I gotta laugh at this stuff. But you know what? Just think how far we've come, how things have changed, just life and generations, and just how the way we view things, and how weak we've gotten. We had Ralph Friedman on here probably about 2 years ago, I think, kind of, at the infancy of this platform. And John and I spoke to Ralph Friedman, awesome guy. He was a cop in the 70s and early 80s. And Ralph Friedman was involved in numerous shootings. And back then, if you remember, John, he told us he was involved in shootings. And within a couple hours, he was back on patrol, or the same day. Like, all right, here's your gun. You took action. And we have just become this weak society. Now, I'm not saying it has to be, at that point, I understand that we've learned things from then. And when cops are involved in shootings and there's protocol, we slow things down to prevent trauma for them. But we have become a weak society. I mean, as I said, Ralph Friedman was involved in numerous shootings, very intrusive cop, outstanding cop, highly decorated, but involved in shootings where he got his gun back the same day. And now we're talking about a raccoon. And this cop is held back from being on patrol. This is stupid. Honestly, you got to laugh at this. That's why there's these funny memes. I have no issues with it. But yes, the next cop that's working the 100 precinct or Central Park or 7-7, you're absolutely right, Marlon. I worked in precincts all over the city. And even on the Lower East Side, I've seen issues with raccoons. So what do you do? What is the training? There's not much. I mean, maybe the NYPD will come out with, I'm sure they'll probably come out with a 5-minute video, I anticipate, about how to handle raccoons. And they'll be, to the moon with the raccoon. I don't know. They'll come out with some silly slogan. But I'm sure there'll be some video coming out. There's no training. We all grew up in New York City. I mean, you shoot it or you try to contain it. If not, good luck waiting for animal control. And you're absolutely right, John. If one of those raccoons, and that's why it's catch-22 being a cop. If one of those raccoons if that raccoon bit a kid, there would be an uproar right now. What did the cops do? Or they didn't do anything. They sat back. You can't win. You can't win. So you know what? To those cops, you did what you had to do. Forget about it. Have a couple of laughs over the raccoon and back to work.
I mean, here's the video that Marlon's talking about. It. She shot it 4 times already, and the thing's still attacking her. And it's not down. I mean, it wild. So, yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's get on to a real topic. It's absolutely ridiculous. Give the guy's gun and shield back.
But send a miss.
No, I put the thing right to.
Yeah.
I'm putting it down in 1.
So somebody at 1PP should run the overtime that was made off of this, not to penalize the cops, but to show that how much waste it is that went into this.
But isn't it funny how ironic? I mean, we got a brothel, pretty much a brothel running at one police plaza. We have a cash machine, ATM machine open at one police plaza. We had all unprofessionalism on social media, YouTube content, misuse of department, inadequate leadership. But a cop shoots a raccoon and we take his gun. It's so lopsided. It's so stupid.
So and then it goes to show that why people can't have legitimate conversation anymore, and why the news is complete garbage at this point. It's complete garbage. I'm all your favorite conservative social media influences, or all your favorite left-wing nut social media influences, they really have no idea what they're talking about. They post based on emotion, or they post based upon what they're told. They're given their talking points. And listen, I got no problem with people having an opinion, There's a guy whose page I follow. I follow him for working out. He's a big dude. He's a special forces guy. And he was weighing in on the shooting too. And he's look, I know I'm going to lose followers, but this is straight murder, blah, 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 talking about the Minneapolis shooter. And I'm look, I'm like, here's the thing. We just have to be able to have rational conversations in this country. You have to understand officer use of force. And I respect that you were in special forces, and I respect that you understand use of force as far as military is concerned. So I wouldn't try to school you on that, but understand this is your opinion and it's uninformed. Like, you have an uninformed opinion. You have the right to your opinion. This is America. We should all have opinions, but the voices that are getting pushed in this country are voices that should not be getting pushed. And unfortunately, it stems a lot. I'm going to say right now, a lot from the Trump administration, them coming out right away on both of these shootings and deeming them good shoots without calling for an investigation, the results of investigation, without putting out the facts and the evidence before doing that is really stupid. Really dumb. It's inflaming more stuff than it should. I mean, everyone knows that Kristi Noem doesn't really know about police officer use of force. She just doesn't. She doesn't know Graham versus Connor. She doesn't know why it was a good shoot. She doesn't know if it was a bad shoot. And so it makes it look so politicized. So, like, again, we have a shooting on the streets of Minneapolis, and all you hear from people is the shooting's good, the shooting's bad, and there's no in between of why the shooting's good or why the shooting's bad. It's just based upon how it looks. It's just based on the court of public opinion. And everyone in this country, like literally everyone, is getting their talking points from people who do not understand what they just observed on this camera here. And they're acting right solely based upon emotion. So we're going to get into that. Before we do, though, what are your just thoughts about what's happening in this country when there is an officer involved shooting, and now all of a sudden it's just, we have the right going, yeah. The cops can shoot me anytime. They can run up on me, mask, and kill me, and that's good. And then you have the left going, no, the cops can never shoot you. Like, what do you think about like the debate in this country over officer involved shooting? Shouldn't like there be leadership on both sides, from both politicians, from any side, saying, let the investigation come out, let the facts come out, and then we'll make a determination as per that, instead of what we're witnessing, where all of a sudden it's either bad or it's good?
I'm gonna say it's not just Trump, but it's also Obama and Clinton. They, late last night I saw statements released by them. This is the statement from is this from Obama? Yes, I believe this is from Obama. No, that one was this is from Clinton, and this is from Obama, right? And the Clinton in particular is odd because we all remember this one, right? We all remember this. And then Obama also, he also deported 3 million illegals. So that's a far more amount than Trump has done so far. So the point I'm trying to make is we have sides that are inflaming the situation, from politicians to the media, and it's every one of them are forcing you to pick a side with no nuance, and now we've gotten to such a level where you see it's police officials, like we talked about a couple episodes ago. You got the idiot running Minnesota police and the moron sheriff in Philly. We have sides that are inflaming the situation, and no one's urging calm. Okay, and it's a shame that we've gotten here, but as we've said before, I can't help but think that there's an agenda behind all of this, and they want you fighting with your neighbor, you arguing with that family member, and you picking a side and not looking at this from the perspective of logic, and looking at it with nuance. And I'll also say one thing before I go. I really didn't look at this shooting. I watched maybe the beginning of it. I haven't really dug into this shooting because at this point I don't care. Okay, now call me black-pilled or whatever, but I don't care because both sides are trying to make me emotionally invested in all of this, and I don't care. We have lunatics on both sides. We have the lunatic politicians who are pushing this, and we have the lunatics who are going out and protesting out there and feel that they have a right to jump in front of ICE and block them, and they don't understand that if you escalate a situation, there's a likelihood that a situation is going to go sideways and it's going to end with your life. Okay, so again, I personally, I just don't care. Okay.
I mean, we're headed for an upheaval and uproar, right? This is the second shooting involving ICE in a month in the same in Minnesota, right? In Minneapolis. And I often wonder, I know, Marlon, you and I spoke about this offline. I said, what is it about Minneapolis that's at the crosshairs of all these major issues? Why is it that the politicians utilize Minneapolis? I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm doing my work trying to figure out why Minneapolis is always the focal point that creates just total chaos in this country, right? George Floyd, this incident, many other issues. Why is it in Minnesota? So trying to drill down. If anyone has any thoughts here, any friends or listeners, why Minneapolis has become such a centric focus and why it's become the city where we have just chaos that moves the needle, moves the entire country. If there's any thoughts of that, I'm curious. Is it the political government in Minneapolis? Is it the setup? Is it something to do with the legislation there? I'm curious, and I haven't figured it out yet, but I'm looking into it, trying to figure out why does it happen so often. You know, is it some type of psyop? Why is it always Minneapolis? So here we are. We have the second involved shooting in this month. And what's interesting, I've read a lot of reports about this particular shooting, and what I often see is the person involved in the shooting. His name is Preddy. Preddy was a male nurse at the VA medical center, and what leads me to believe also that there's actually wrongdoing on his part is I hear often in these reports that he was a caring person, he was a nurse, and how he cared for people, constantly here. But I'm not hearing on his actions on this particular incident, right? What do we, as far as of what we hear from ICE, is that Preddy threatened and brandished a firearm, and the argument is that he didn't have a firearm, that he had a phone in his hand. That's what I've seen in several reports on this particular case. But the bottom line is, to the public at this point, why would you engage in any activity with any law enforcement, not just ICE, something that's stupid? Why would you try to antagonize law enforcement? Why would you put yourself in that position? Especially, the first incident, you're a woman with 2 kids. Why would you charge a police officer with your car? Here we have someone else. Why would you brandish a weapon towards law enforcement? Not just ICE or any, we're talking about any law enforcement. You're putting your own life in your hands. And again, we talk about justified shootings, right? Justified issues. It's far different from military and police. We can't compare. I compare. I've been involved in both, right? I was in combat, and also I've walked the streets of New York City. And policing is it's a different animal, right? In the military, you have rules of engagement. There are strict rules of engagement. There's no doubt about it. But you're shooting. Normally, you're shooting from long distances, or you're involved. Is where you're not even aware of who your adversary is or even what they look like. This is completely different. This is up close and personal, and police encounters and talking about American soil. I think that I agree with John. I think that the Donald Trump administration should do a full-out investigation. We want transparency and accountability, and give a preliminary status quo case to the public. Let them know what you've encountered at this point, but do a full investigation so that we bring the tensions down, because it does inflame people, creates anxiety, and people get anxious and angry when we don't have a full investigation and we're just giving a prejudgment decision. There should be transparency. Hey, we have body camera footage. This is what we have at this point. We're doing a full investigation. And once that full investigation is determined, then give the results of that investigation on how the cookie crumbles.
And so Phil the Heater guy brings up a point that I'll be honest, Phil, this is the point that's been annoying me the most. And I'm going to actually agree with Nin here for once. So he says, why would you bring a firearm to a demonstration against law enforcement? and then says, y'all believe in the Second Amendment here? It's a fair point. Because so originally reports come out and they tell you that this man was, and this comes out from the right, this man was attacking law enforcement trying to kill them with a firearm. When you watch the video, that is clearly not what happened. It's clearly not what happened. There was a scuffle and the man was armed with a legal firearm with a pistol. Okay? So now, for those of you that live in New York State, not in America, you could have a pistol permit, but there's like 20 places where you can't go because Chairman Hochul has deemed it sensitive. One of those sensitive locations is a First Amendment activity. What is a First Amendment activity? I don't know, because I think everything you do throughout the day is a First Amendment activity. Right? So I don't really know. But what it's saying is that if you're a concealed carry holder in New York, you cannot go to a protest concealed carry. If you do, it's Class E felony. You violated sensitive location area. You violated 26501. I think it's E subsection S, if I remember correctly. And so that's insane. For people to sit there and say, I cannot bring a firearm to use my voice is insane. And then you got people on the left screaming left and right, he was murdered, he didn't do anything wrong. And that's not what happened either. That's not what happened either. So let's just get into the video, but like let's be clear, right? First of all, you shouldn't ever get physical with law enforcement. Right? Because the potential for you to you're putting your life in danger right away the minute you get physical with law enforcement. Why? Because you're endangering the life of law enforcement, right? So obviously they have the right to defend themselves. They have the right to self-defense. So the minute you get physical with a law enforcement agent, your life is in danger. We could avoid that by, just be civil. You fight your battles in the court of law. You stand 6 feet away, 20 feet away. You film, you record, you protest, right? I mean, and in most states, it's perfectly normal and it's perfectly fine for you to have a firearm, a loaded firearm at a protest, and then, and like, it's just a mishmash of insanity. And then pitches come out of the firearm and they make it's a military style pistol with an extra magazine. And I'm like, what the F is a military style pistol? It's a handgun and he had an extra magazine. Oh, okay. And what else? So you have a licensed, permitted concealed carry holder with a firearm. Sounds pretty American. Sounds American as apple pie to me. Doesn't sound anything terroristic about that to me. And he went to a demonstration where he was literally filming, right? Where he messes up is where he gets physical. That's where he completely messes up. That's where all of this goes bad, because now not only did you get physical with law enforcement, but you're armed. What are the chances you think of you getting shot with you being physical when you're armed? I don't care legally, not legally. What do you think your chances are? I'll tell you right now, I carry. A lot of people, I've got a lot of threats. I carry everywhere I am, right? And I'm exempted in New York State because I'm retired law enforcement. That exempts you. So I actually could carry, right? But when I'm interacting with law enforcement, even though I know I didn't do anything wrong, even though I know I'm no harm to those officers whatsoever, I will not going to do anything. I have no intention. I am scared for my life the minute I interact with them because I'm armed. Like, officer, just so you know, and I'm not required to tell them. In Florida, I'm not even required to tell them I'm armed. Officer, I just want to let you know I'm armed. I have my pistol in my right pocket or wherever I have it at the moment. I have a pistol in my glove box. Wherever it is, I'm just letting you know I'm a concealed carry holder. I'm a retired law enforcement. I make them see my hands. I do not want to get shot. When you're carrying a firearm to a protest and it gets crazy, you should step back. You don't go forward. And that's where it messes up. So let's get into this video. So here we go. It starts off here. We're gonna stop early and often. So here we go. All right. Before we go any further, all I see here, clear protest, protesters interfering with ICE, ICE telling them to get on the sidewalk, and they're refusing. Does anybody see anything differently here?
Nope, I don't. And to your point, John, you know, just because you can doesn't mean you should. You know what I mean? Just because I can't because I don't have my gun rights in New York City anymore. Okay, Jessica, I don't have my gun rights here. You know, we know your people are watching. Yeah. Hey, Scott, you paying attention? Anyway, I think just because you can doesn't mean you should. You know, just because you can, you know, the Second Amendment, as it applies to that state, because like John said, New York State is a whole different world. You know, that doesn't mean you should. You know, especially in a charged up situation. You know, where ICE you already know that ICE is already on they're already on high alert, okay, because of the tension that's been going around these raids. You already know the situation is very very emotionally charged, okay. You're going to bring your firearm there, and as John said, you're gonna get into it with ICE. It's just stupid, okay. It's plain stupid, okay. And again, we're not saying anything about your Second Amendment rights, okay? I'm a staunch believer in the Second Amendment, okay? In fact, if I became Emperor of America, I would make it mandatory that you have to own a gun, and you have to go to gun training. You have to learn how to use a weapon, okay? But just because you can doesn't mean you should, because it's stupid and it risks escalating the situation and things going sideways, as happened here.
So I want to discuss this. So Maria US says, why bring loaded gun? So throughout my travels throughout the entire country, I've been in some states like Nevada, Arizona, where it's open carry. I've been to some states where it's concealed carry. And there are different opinions on it, right? So what I do know is this. These are civil liberties. These are liberties and rights of the Constitution, your First Amendment, your Second Amendment right. Now, for me personally, I like to carry concealed, and I carry also. And I think concealed carry is the way to go. But that's for me. Now, everyone's different, right? I don't tell people on how to dress, on what to wear, how to look, how to live their lives, right? That's your life. And I think people really make too much big deal of fantasizing and romanticizing a firearm by people that really don't know anything about firearms, because in many places, a firearm is just another piece, another tool, or another item that people wear. It's part of their belonging. For some people, right, you put your shoes on, you put your socks on, you put your pants on, you put your shirt on, you put your wallet in your pocket, you grab your keys. And for some people, they grab their gun, they put their gun in their pocket. It's just another piece on you, right? It's part of who you are, right? It's part of your protection. It doesn't necessarily mean, I think people have this idea, unfortunately, and I don't know if it's you, Maria, and if you could continue the conversation, I appreciate it. But I think some people have this idea that if you bring a loaded gun, that you're looking for trouble. And that's not the case. Responsible gun owners carry that gun as protection. Same thing, right? You carry your wallet, right? For most people, right, you carry several credit cards. Right? Are you going to use every credit card? No. You have credit cards that you use that are primary, but then you also have backups. The same thing as carrying a gun. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're looking for trouble, but you carry it there as a sense of protection and as a backup. And I have this ideology that people think that people carry guns because they're looking for trouble. Now, open carry, I do believe open carry is a liberty and Second Amendment. I will fight for people's rights if that's what they want. Me personally, I like concealed carry, but if that's what you want, but this idea of bringing a loaded gun is like, oh, you're looking for trouble. That is not the case at all. John is telling you he carries his gun on him, not because he's looking for trouble, because it's there. And you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So, unfortunately, I don't think we should demonize the firearm. What's the difference if you carry it at a protest or somewhere else? A responsible gun owner, it's in your pocket. No one knows you have it. It's there concealed. It's there as a last resort. And it's there as another added tool in your ambiance of tools. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny because the right sits there and they tell you that they respect the Second Amendment, but then at the same time, they really public, like I don't know how to say it, but they basically politicize and they fantasize, like you said, I can't think of the right word, but they make such a big deal when actually someone does carry a gun, or someone owns a gun, or someone has ammo in their home. It's like, wait a minute, time out. Do you believe in the Second Amendment or you don't? And so right here, like people are like, oh, he didn't have his ID on him. He didn't have his ID on him. That's a sign right there. Okay, the guy didn't have ID on him. I'm just going to give you a scenario. Right? I'm a member of the Independent Press. I drop my daughter off at whatever, cheerleading practice, soccer practice, whatever. I drop her off there and I'm driving home. And I see something occurring, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to get some video of this. And I get out. And now I have my gun on me. Do I always have my ID and my wallet on me? I do. But by chance, maybe I left it in my car. Maybe it was the one day I didn't take it out of my house. There's plenty of reasons for not having an ID. That doesn't make you a domestic terrorist. Bringing a loaded firearm anywhere doesn't make you a domestic terrorist. Again, I carry a loaded firearm everywhere. So why loaded? Like, yeah, when I don't carry an unloaded firearm. You know, people have all these things about the guns. Like, I know people that carry guns that aren't loaded. I'm like, you're an idiot. You leave it home. You're not prepared to use it. Leave it home. You're going to get killed with it. You're going to get it taken off you. You're going to get beat up. Why carry a gun? Because it's a very dangerous world out there, and you don't know what's going to happen. If you're trained and you want to exercise your right to self-defense, the gun is the great equalizer. Whether you're a woman, whether you're disabled, whether you're elderly, a gun is a great equalizer, right? And depending how you grew up, where you live, you unfortunately might have to use that. And to protect your own life or the life of others. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with owning a firearm. There's nothing wrong with carrying a firearm. We shouldn't sit here and demonize the gun. And what the right is doing it. And it's basically feeding into the leftist narrative of let's get rid of the Second Amendment and it's a military style handgun. Get the F out of here. Get the F out of here, because that's absolutely ridiculous. The guy was a licensed gun owner. He was exercising his Second Amendment right, which is God-given, which is protected by the Constitution. Now, where he screws up is he's an absolute moron, and he puts his hands on a federal agent to protect someone that was interfering in their operations, in ICE operations. So guess what he did? He committed a felony. Right? He committed a felony because he was obstructing. He was obstructing a federal agent. He put his hands on a federal agent. And here's where it goes bad. It's not because the guy's armed. It's because you're a moron. That's why. It's because you shouldn't ever put your hands on a law enforcement officer, right or wrong. Right? And so is the law enforcement officer right for shoving this woman and her falling over the snow? I don't know. We're not even talking about that. I'm saying if he's wrong, that he should have stood back, filmed it, and they should have went on, filed a complaint, filed a lawsuit, filed grievances, not get into a physical confrontation here. What he did was, while armed, get into a physical confrontation with a law enforcement officer. Very, very bad move. And then while it's physical, you continue to resist and fight with them. This is where the conversation starts. It's not to demonize guns. It's not to demonize gun owners. It's not to demonize someone who is a legal gun owner and forgot their ID home. It's to talk about what happened and what led to the circumstances where the shooting occurred. The totality of the circumstances. That's what we're doing here. But instead, what's happening on the right and on the left from these supposed independent social media influences and from these supposed legacy media is they're inflaming talking points that have nothing to do with what occurred, and they're not talking about was the shooting justified or was it not justified. That's what they're doing. It's all meant to sit here to cause debate, to inflame this, to have more people go out on the street, to push back further at law enforcement. And what's ultimately going to happen? More people are going to end up dead. There's going to be more chaos on the streets of America. This is what's happening. So that's it, right? We're interfering with operations, ICE operations. ICE is telling them to get back onto the sidewalk. He shoves a woman. She falls over the snow mound. The man gets involved. He puts his hands. You see it clear as day. His hand is on the ICE agent saying, get the F off of her. And he's acting in a violent and tumultuous behavior, right? While committing a felony, acting in concert of obstructing a law enforcement officer. And now actually putting his hand on while he's attempting to effect an arrest. So here we go. Let's continue to play it. Now in the man's right hand, you see clear as day when you go back, you see it. He's got his camera or it's a phone. I don't know if it's a phone or it's camera, but that camera stays in his hand the entire time. Now, does the ICE agent know that? I don't know. It's a chaotic scene. There's 3 people there. There's dozens of people behind him. He doesn't know who's coming up or not. He sprays the man in his face, right? Sprays him in his face with the pepper spray. There's absolutely nothing wrong with what this officer's doing, right? He's using a little higher level of force than physical. He's using pepper spray, which is supposed to be a non-lethal, right? So here we go. Now he's going to attempt to arrest a man. Man resisting, and he's grabbing on and holding on to the woman. Now here's where things get sticky. Multiple ICE agents come over. Eric, do you think if we asked him right now how many people he was wrestling with, he has any clue, or which ICE agents were near him?
Oh, absolutely not. There's no way. No. That's why we often talk about Graham versus Connor, right? What's happened in real time, what's happened in police time. People don't understand that the analysis of a criminal case or justification of homicide or use of force is based on Graham versus Connor. What's happened in real time? Because if John was involved in an incident, rhetorically speaking, what he's going to remember is far different than what I might remember. So absolutely, he's not going to remember. Graham versus Connor is much different than watching something body camera where you could dissect it into pieces.
Mom, what are your thoughts about initially? Now you're in this chaotic scene. What do you think about the officer right now? The shooting, the initial officer who gets into the scuffle. Is he aware of what's happening around him at this moment?
Yeah, I wonder. You know, this situation is just so like ridiculous. You know, I have so much issues with again this entire strategy. You know, I have so many issues with it, and you know, this is coming on what, 2 weeks after the last one, and I think we're probably going to see more of it happening. Because again, this entire strategy is just wrong, and it's destined to end in incidents that go sideways. You know, this scene is a mess, and there's so much chaos going on right there that you know it's hard to tell what's going on, and it's hard to see what the officer saw at this exact moment. And I think just the fact that discussion there's no nuance in this discussion is going to create endless back and forth, because again, it's hard to see what's going on in the scene, and it's hard to know what the officer saw at the time.
Yeah. So, all right. So now there's multiple ICE agents here, right? They're trying to get the man, right? He's obviously the bigger threat than the two women that he's with, right? So the ICE agents are helping the ICE agent to subdue the man. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to the ICE agent in the gray jacket, right? And you see they're fighting. You see right here, the man has his hands on the ground. He's refusing to put his hands behind his back. Here's where the ICE agent right here, he realizes the man's armed, right? Because you see him going down towards his hip. You realize that he realizes that he's armed. And again, I personally, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say it again. Their tactics are horrendous. They have not been in these situations often, and you could tell. They have not been in these violent and tumultuous arrest situations often, because you could see there's no supervision. There's no people trying to get back, trying to understand what's happening, instruct the officers. All right, grab his hands, do this, put his other hand behind his back, get his other hand. The fact that his hand here is free and he's still holding, you see the camera right there? He's still holding it, shows me that they're really not well trained in how to handcuff somebody. There is a huge gap in their tactical training when it comes to policing like a municipal police department. Huge gap you could clearly see here. So again, how does it look? It looks awful. I'm not going to sit here and praise them and be like, oh, they're the top law enforcement agency in America. Like, no, I support ICE, but I'm going to call out the bullshit where I see it. Clearly this man should have been handcuffed immediately. Both his hands should have been put behind his back. They would have observed the gun while he was cuffed. So here we go. Continue to watch the gray guy. I'm going to slow this down a little bit. Let me change the playback speed, and I'm going to shut the volume off here. So now watch what happens. Still no one's trying to get this right arm's just out there. Gray goes in, right? Look, he goes in, he goes over. He goes over the man's back. Watch what happens now. They're fighting. Now you can't really see what's happening. But again, the man's hand is still out. His arms are still on the ground. Right? And I believe at this point is when someone yells gun, because you see the frenzy. They panic. Now watch Gray. Watch what he's doing. Look what he's doing. He's ripping something. Rip. Boom. You see what he ripped? He ripped the firearm, the military-style pistol that they're showing with the Romeo sight, right? This high-level, high-tech 9mm firearm. So the thing about this model SIG is it's been known to fire. Now, there are people making claims that the gun fired right here. I'll be honest, I don't know that I saw that. I like Marlon, haven't went too nuts into this, but I think it's important we put the volume on here, because he has just pulled the gun, right? At about 38 seconds, he pulls the gun. I'm going to put the fire on. I'm going to put it on now. He pulls the gun. Let's see where it fires. So some people are saying that it was actually this gun that led to the charge. I don't see that. I think they shoot first. I think that ICE shoots. I don't know that this gun goes off at all from what I'm seeing. I mean, it's possible. I just don't know it at this point. So what happens is, what the left is now hanging on is saying, well, the other guy, the guy in the gray, pulled the gun out and ran away, and a second later there was a shot. And I'll play it in full speed right now so you can see that that's actually what happens. And that is not inaccurate, but it doesn't make it unjustified. Here you go. So very possible that it was that gun, but we don't know that yet. But here's my problem with all of this, right? He pulls the gun, the shot gets fired, and then there's shots. So basically people are saying he's unarmed. One, just because you ripped a gun off of a guy does not mean that he's unarmed. Two, you don't know that man in the gray, that ICE agent grabbed that gun. More than likely, they do not know that he has that gun. 3, guy still has a large black object in his hand, right? And they're yelling, gun, 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 gun. Is it possible that the officer perceived that large black object in his hand as a firearm, thought he had no choice but to shoot the man in the back? Whether he was armed, unarmed at that point doesn't matter, because the way I'm looking at this is that ICE agent, any reasonable officer would believe that ICE agent had the right to believe that serious physical injury or death were imminent, and they were imminent at the hands of that man by use of a firearm based upon what he feels and hears at that scene. Because again, he's on the ground in a chaotic, violent scene, and he's worried about his life. His adrenaline is flowing. So that's what matters, in my opinion. Justified.
So we're back to this conversation when we talk about justified versus what Marlon said. You can do, but should you? And ultimately, I think the major problem goes back to what I said episodes prior, including this one, that in my opinion, ICE is trained, just as most federal law enforcement agencies, for planned events. They're doing surveillance, a lot of intelligence work, in comparison to where your local law enforcement municipalities are dealing with the unexpected on a daily basis, unplanned. And I can say this because I did that type of work. The best cops in PSA 7. In PSA 7, doing special operations in plain clothes every day. This wasn't a daily occurrence, sometimes numerous, where we're getting numerous guns off violent perpetrators in the South Bronx. And it's chaotic. It's chaotic when you have a team of cops and you're trying to rip a gun off someone. John, you know you've been involved in that, Maul, and some of you. John, you've done anti-crime. And you know what is the most important thing? What is the most important thing when you're working as a team and you're trying to remove a firearm from someone, or if you're not and you're aware that there's a firearm? Here's the most important thing, and this is where I see they're lacking. John, I think you kind of alluded to it. Communication. Communication is the most important thing to any training apparatus, especially when you're working as a team. And that's what I see lacking here. And I believe that was the key to our success in PSA 7, PSA 4, doing anti-crime and doing special operation plainclothes, was the level of communication with myself and my teammates. Communication is key. That is the most important training apparatus. We would communicate to each other. What's going on? What are we doing? What are we looking at? You know, I don't even see anyone in this group from ICE turning around saying, okay, I got the crowd. Okay, we have 3 guys on top trying to control the perpetrator, right? Sometimes, and John, Maul, you know what I'm talking about. When you get those pile-ons, more is less, right? And you can't even see whose hands are what. I mean, I've seen it numerous times where there's so many cops involved, where there's too many, and someone else sees a hand trying to grab a firearm, and I seen a cop take out their baton, and they end up whacking a cop's hand because it's a cop trying to grab the firearm. So I see a lack of communication. And that's where I see what's going on here with ICE. There's a lack of training. We need more training. That doesn't alleviate from the fact that it's justified. It's still justified. But we've gotten to this point where incident after incident, we're lacking training. We need much more training at ICE. ICE needs to start training local law enforcement apparatuses throughout the entire country to see what local municipalities do on a daily basis, how they get used to the unexpected, how they deal with the volume in this metropolis, because they're not prepared for this. And knowing that, the public should have even more responsibility. We have somebody who's carrying a firearm. I have no issues with him carrying the firearm. What I do have an issue with is when that firearm was observed and the ICE agent took that firearm, was there a level of communication to let them know I just retrieved the firearm? We don't know. But the bottom line is a shot went off, there's fear and alarm, and they pulled that trigger. So I do believe it's justified. The question is whether you can or can't. Numerous times I've been involved in situations in the NYPD where I could have shot, and I would have been justified, but I didn't, because we had the training. And part of that training was doing it on a daily basis, right? You become so pressure tested. You're always doing it. You're involved in it. It becomes muscle memory. ICE does not have that muscle memory to be in such chaotic incidents like we have here. It's justified. It's terrible. But responsible gun owners, if you are a responsible gun owner, you have to make people aware that you have that firearm. And especially do not get involved in an escalated situation. While that woman is impeding ICE, we have Preddy who gets involved in that situation. Stay back. Do not get involved. That's why we often say it's a crime. It's a crime to get involved in a police incident, because when you impede in the police and they have to divert their attention, you now put yourself in a violent and tumultuous situation. This is absolutely stupid on all parts. ICE clearly needs more training. It's just it's lacking. It's inadequate level of communication. I hate those pylons. It looks terrible. I would always tell my cops, if we're in a situation, we're fighting with a perpetrator, have 2 or 3, and then everyone else will be involved, either where it's looking up for airmail, it's looking at the crowd, directing, getting communication. Communication is the most important tool to save lives. I mean, we wrestle with perpetrators on a daily basis with illegal firearms, and we never shot anyone. So again, I want to say, didn't even realize how good we were, the NYPD, until we see these incidents with ICE. So if you're in the NYPD, even now, at the predicament it's gotten, pat yourself on the back, because this is something you do every day, and you're not using your firearm. But again, it is justified, but it needs to be looked at. They need a new blueprint, ICE, because it's just not working. It's not working, and I don't blame them. They're put into the fire. They're put in these situations without training, and they're scared because they haven't been pressure tested. They do not know how to react. The same thing was you talk about the cops with the rabid animals, unsure of what tools to use, how to react. It goes for the same way for ICE.
Yeah, John, you're muted.
Just before you go, Molly, I watched it on my phone and I zoomed in. It does look like the SIG went off. It looks like the first shot was the SIG with the guy with the gray hand. It sounds like that, and even his reaction with the gun, the minute that shot goes, he kind of like startled and he runs away. And then that's when you hear the multiple shots getting fired. So black thing in the hand, law enforcement knows they're fighting with, they hear gun, boom, shot goes off, boom, boom, boom. He thinks the shooting's way more than justified at that point. I mean, it was justified even if that wasn't the case, but it's even more justified. You know the guy has a gun, you're worried about your life, and now shots start getting fired, and this guy's got a black thing in his hand. I mean, sorry, Mon.
Yeah, Nin is gonna blow he's probably gonna smash his computer right now. Yeah, that pylon right there is one of the reasons I have such an issue with the way NYPD, the way we arrest people now. The fact that it takes like 4 or 5 guys to arrest one dude, that so annoys me. That annoys me so much. The fact that like our unions and the city itself hasn't tried to put up a legal fight against the diaphragm law and challenged it, it just drives me nuts, because the ability to put your weight on the upper body of somebody, it's to me it puts more, it allows you to take control of that situation much more efficiently than having 5 guys pile on to somebody, And a lot of times, let me tell you, like that makes things worse. Like Eric told you just now, it makes things worse, right? I remember when I was a rookie, right? Now this was just one person that came and helped me, but when I was a rookie, I chased a perp. It was me and a transit sergeant and his driver. I saw them following a dude into Chauncey Street, which is are these projects in Bed-Stuy between Malcolm X and Stuyvesant. And I followed them in, and we get in there, and the guy took off. And back then I was fast, so I run ahead, and I managed to catch the guy. I had him up against the door as he tried to get out and go back onto Fulton Street and run into the subway. So I had him against the door. I had my firearm on my side too, but I had him pressed up against the door. So I'm putting away my firearm, and the sergeant's driver comes around the corner and pulls the guy off me. I already had him. All we had to do was cuff him. He pulls the guy off the wall and throws him on the floor. And next thing you know, we're rolling around with the guy on the floor. And I'm like, what are you doing? All you had to do was cuff the dude dead, And this is why, like, when you add 4 guys on top of pylon like that, it just makes things worse. Okay. Because nobody knows that, especially when these guys haven't worked with each other, they don't have a routine. Nobody knows who's grabbing what, who's doing what. And it just, and the chances of confusion and the incident going sideways increases. you know? So again, this is why this whole thing that we're doing now where NYPD needs 4 cops to arrest the guy is stupid. It's stupid, okay? And you risk a situation going sideways, okay? It hasn't, God willing, I don't think it's happened yet, but I'm telling you, it's only a matter of time before something like that happens.
You know what,
And-
Marlon? You're a racist. You're running after a perpetrator.
Uh.
Did you run in the police academy? Did that help you with your running ability? Was that necessary?
Yeah, right. It was racist, yeah. But I there's also a comment here made by Raheem. I told him I would respond to it next go around. He says, so what should be done since this was the wrong move? And I'm guessing he's criticizing what I said about ICE's tactics and the strategy overall. Now it's funny because Nin is on the left in the chat and he's pushing us to take a stance on the left. While Raheem here obviously seems to be shifting towards the right and wants us to take a stand on the right. You know, it's either all or nothing. And my point here, Raheem, is that you need ICE, as we talked about prior episodes. ICE last year, 2025, ICE they apprehended 329,000 illegals. Right, that strategy will take. I believe the math on it that I did was 10, 12 years to apprehend the upwards of 12 to 14 million illegals in this country. It's not going to work. You're not going to get these ICE guys to do that for consistently for 10 to 12 years. Come on. You need, like we said, you need a whole of government approach for this. Obama deported 3 million illegals, okay? And I don't recall ICE surging neighborhoods with like an army, you know? It's the strategy they have is impractical and it will lead to more incidents going sideways like this because you have guys who aren't trained as urban cops, as city cops. You have guys who haven't worked together, who don't have routines like guys in a precinct do because they see each other every day. Okay, you have guys, you have cops, you have ICE surging in neighborhoods that already hate cops and that already like filled with wacko liberals. Okay, who are again making the situation even worse. So again, you have to have a whole of government approach, and as we said before, Trump should have come with he should have put pressure on these liberal cities and states to clean up themselves and to get rid of sanctuary city laws, okay, so that their police officers work with ICE again, okay, and Raheem also said, so what you're saying is, no, that's not what we're saying, okay, you have to take a nuanced position on this. You can't, if we take one side or the other, we're heading towards a mass civil disobedience and potentially a civil war, and that is what I know that's what some of the elites want, but that is not the way to do it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is like no one even talks about officer use of force anymore. It's just like not on the news, so no one understands it. And again, if you're gonna have an opinion, shoot, no shoot, you have to go by what Supreme Court has already dictated when it comes to officer use of force. So, you know, let's just go through Graham versus Connor real quick. I wrote this yesterday. Supreme Court held. Let's go. Before declaring use of force justified or not, please read Graham versus Connor. In 1989, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the use of force cases are judged under the Fourth Amendment using objectable reasonableness, not hindsight. The Supreme Court held, as in the Fourth Amendment context, the reasonableness inquiry in excessive force cases is an objective one. The question is whether the officer's actions are objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances confronting him without regard to the underlying intent or motivation. The reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, and its calculus must embody an allowance for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second decisions about the amount of force necessary in a particular situation. In summary, the below factors are what is used when deciding if force was reasonable at the time. what the officer knew at the time, the severity of the crime, whether there was an immediate threat, whether the suspect was resisting or fleeing. The outcome in hindsight does not matter. Hindsight, after all the evidence and facts come out, do not outweigh the gravity and chaos of the moment. In policing, there's a saying, lawful but awful. An officer can make mistakes and at the time perceive what was occurring inaccurately and still be legally justified. This is why you don't fight cops, especially if you're armed, legally or not. Street encounters are not courtrooms. Disputes get handled in court. On the street, officers get the benefit of the doubt by necessity. If you reject that reality, you're arguing to abolish the police, whether you know it or not. The reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene rather than the 2020 vision of hindsight. So again, that was a 1989 Supreme Court ruling, but we've actually had another ruling clarifying Graham versus Connor either further, and that rule is Felix versus Barnes. If you're active police officer or you're not and you want to know about use of force, look up Felix versus Barnes. That ruling was in 2025, and what it does is it takes out the moment of threat doctrine that Graham versus Connor created. So Graham versus Connor kind of left it open, saying that nothing else matters except right in that moment of time, where what Felix versus Barnes says is, well, it does. The totality of the circumstances actually do matter. So it doesn't weaken Graham versus Connor at all. It just, you have to have a whole view of the scenario of what happened rather than just, hey, look, it was right at that moment in time when they shot. It narrows out to make the whole scene about the totality of the circumstances. Again, that's Felix versus Barnes. That was in 2025. So look that case up too. So, I mean, and if you go on either of those and you read those and you deduct and you watch that video and you walk through step by step of them, it's bottom line. You could say what you want. The office is justified, whether you like it or not, whether you think that it's great police work or you think it's awful police work. I personally think it's awful police work, but I think that they're more than justified based upon the totality of the circumstances and based upon the reasonableness of what an officer on the scene would have perceived, based upon the fact the guy's resisting arrest, he's armed, a shot gets fired. So when you take all of that into account, I mean, it is what it is, whether you like it or not. It's just this is why the street is absolutely not a courtroom. And here's the model of the firearm that was used. And here's a man, I think he made this video about last year. I watched this video and it was pretty dangerous. And look, I'm not knocking SIGs. I own two of them. I own a 226 and I own a P365. I've had no issues with them whatsoever. I personally love SIG. But I was scared of this model after watching this, and this was the model the man was armed with. And it does appear, now that I watched it further and I zoomed in on it, it does appear that gun accidentally discharged, heard the shot fire, and that's when the man watch this video of this man. Watch what he shows about this model firearm. I just want to make sure that with playback speed normal. Okay.
Put some input into the slide somewhere. Will it go off again? Will it release? Let's see. That's 3 in a row. Let me take the screw out. Number 4. Let's try it again. Let me show you. Fully functioning striker safety. All right. Should we do it with the magazine again? Let's put the magazine back in, and then we'll try the last one with the magazine out. Handy dandy trigger input tool. We are going to try to, dang, sorry about that. I'm trying to get over a sinus thing and a cough. We're going to try to simulate all right, here we go. Again, we are roughly, as we saw on the tabletop, I'm guessing we're roughly 1 millimeter to less than 1 millimeter of engagement on that trigger. And let's see if we can get it to go off again. That was 4.
That's scary shit right there. That's pretty scary, dude. You know, like scary shit.
That's scary because one thing we learned, right? Well, firearms actually maintained by law enforcement. Law enforcement on this channel knows that active retired throughout the entire country. But if you're a police enthusiast or you're just someone that doesn't have much knowledge of firearms, a lot of firearm does not have a safety, does not have an actual safety pin or safety snap button for law enforcement officers. The safety is you, right? But these guns are tested. I mean, the guns in the NYPD that you're allowed to have, that you're permitted to have to carry, they're all tested. They're tested to the point that, and some people would say they're not doing that, but if you threw your gun off a building, it's not supposed to fire. The only way that gun is supposed to fire is by actually pressing that trigger. So watching that video is scary, John. I wasn't even aware that firearm had that capability to have that type of accidental discharge. That is scary. That is scary. There should be a recall immediately on that firearm. It should be taken off the market. That's absolutely scary. With that being said, I'm glad you mentioned, because I love Supreme Court cases. I often mentor cops, and I would tell them, and I still do, the NYPD patrol guide is important, and so is the penal law. But I think the most important thing as a cop, to be an effective cop, and that's just not New York City, that's nationwide, is to understand Supreme Court case. So I'm glad you brought that up, because Graham versus Connor is a great case that came out in 1989, but I think that Felix versus Barnes actually corrected Graham versus Connor, because Graham versus Connor was based on the actual split-second moment that the firearm is discharged, if there's a justified shooting or not, to determine if the shooting is justified. But what Felix versus Barnes did, it actually monitors now the chain of events. John said it, the totality of circumstances. So if cops are involved in an incident, just as we watch here, right? We keep saying ICE, but it's actually Border Patrol agents here. These Border Patrol agents that are involved in this incident, it's the chain of events, the sequence of events that led up to the actual shot being fired that are included in the justification of a shooting. Why? So why did Felix versus Barnes become such an important case? Because of qualified immunity, civil action lawsuits, and the civil liability that cops are actually involved in. So that's why Felix versus Barnes became such an important case, because cops were not being protected under qualified immunity and getting civil lawsuits because it was not covering the entire incident. So finally, something in the favor of law enforcement by the judges. In that case, is 2025 for Felix versus Barnes. So understand that Graham versus Connor, coupled with Felix versus Barnes, is very important to law enforcement, because law enforcement, when you're taking action, is perceived on what's happening in that moment. I can tell you right now, if myself, John, and Marlon were working together, and if we were involved in an incident, and if we were all taking separate rooms and testify or give a testimony based on what we saw, what we perceived, and what actions we took, the three of us would give different stories. And the problem is, that's why we often talk about watching body camera footage. If we watch body camera footage and then give our stories, in my thinking, it's kind of a lie, because now we're all seeing the same things because we're watching body camera footage. When in reality, when we're involved in it, some of us have different peripheral vision. If you take your thumbs and you bring them across, when do you actually see your thumbnail? Everyone's peripheral vision is different, and how we perceive things, what our tolerance is for danger. So those cases are very important. Watching body camera, to me, is not three-dimensional. I think it's one-dimensional, because you're just seeing it from one plane. You're not seeing it what's above. You're not seeing it from the side. You're not seeing it from different angles, and you can slow things down and dissect it. It's not fair to watch it in that manner. I do believe if things are viewed on body camera footage, it should be watched in whole and not stopped until the investigation is done, and not dissected second by second. Because when you dissect it, you're going to stop and say, oh, look at this. Meanwhile, some cop that's involved in that incident or law enforcement agency did not see it from that manner. Marlon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm looking at some of these comments here, and I'm sorry, but if you came here expecting us to unfairly look at the situation and to crucify law enforcement, you're at the wrong place. Okay, I think we're looking at the situation pretty fairly. Okay, and by the way, there's a warning floating around the internet about SIG recommending that that firearm be carried with an empty chamber. I haven't confirmed it yet, but But again, if you're coming here expecting us to unfairly crucify these cops, these ICE agents, you're wrong here. Okay, you're in the wrong place. Okay, we've all been in a situation similar to that, and we're talking to you from the point of view of experienced cops. Okay, and law enforcement, people who are involved in law enforcement. Okay, I think I was gonna bring up one more thing about again, we've looked at this situation pretty fairly, okay, and we're critical of the overall strategy. And I just want to bring this up to point out that even though ICE is surging, we're still not going after people in certain industries. So, which brings up the point that how ineffective and inefficient this strategy is for the long term in terms of uh, you know, rounding up illegals. And again, we need a whole of government approach and not a strategy that's likely to end in incidents going sideways like you're seeing here.
Yeah, and I don't know the person's name, Nicolas or something.
Yeah.
He's on here, Nicolas Marcus, 12.99. You know, I totally agree with you that none of us should have an opinion on this right now. Totally agree with your first statement there. This is what's happened in the media. This is what has been opened up is like now law enforcement incidents. It's like ESPN. Every day we see a body camera video, or we see a video come out, and it's like and me and Eric and Marlon, we're getting off the cool side of the pillow, and then we're coming out, and everybody's an expert, and we're all talking about what's happening. I think what's different about this show is we're not just giving it from a law enforcement perspective. We're actually giving the law that it cites, and we're trying to explain it. It's not to justify every shooting. I see Tabitha. She says we cannot justify all shootings. We can't, and we can't say that shootings are bad just because it doesn't fit a political narrative either. And I think we have a real nuanced perspective on all of this. What's happening on the streets of Minnesota right now and throughout the country it's no different, in my opinion, than when John Shell decided he was going to let a couple of young, inexperienced, untrained rookies chase people for paper plates. To me, this is the same strategy. You knew how that was going to end. You knew it was going to cause innocent people to get killed. You knew that women were going to get run over. You knew that cops' careers were going to get destroyed. You knew every single thing like that was going to happen. And it's the same thing here. We're looking at the policy, and we're like, look, what do you think is going to happen if we keep ending up in this situation? There's just going to be shooting after shooting after shooting, and there's going to be outrage after outrage. And it's just going to lead to worse things. So it clearly is ineffective. And, Marlon gives the point of like, well, if it was 300,000, it's going to take about over 14 years, whatever that time frame is. But that's assuming no one else jumps over the border.
Yeah.
Right. That's assuming that this is not an effective strategy by any stretch of the imagination. So, no, we don't want to see people getting killed. We don't think it's a good thing that this guy. I wasn't celebrating his death. Nobody on here was celebrating the guy's death. It is what it is. It happened. It happened. It happened as a result of this policy. It happened as a result of this man's own actions. I'll go back to Sonny and the Bronx Tale. They met at the wrong time in their lives. But it could have been avoided. This was an avoidable situation. This was an avoidable situation from both the left and the right. Like Marlon said, I agree with a whole of government approach. In my opinion, and just to go back, something Eric said earlier, he said, why Minnesota? Why Minnesota? Because you know why in Minnesota, Eric? I'm going to tell you, because they completely, utterly, totally emasculated that police department, not just from the top, all the way down. All the way down. I watched video after video of these ICE agents and these Border Patrol, whatever they are. I'm going to say ICE because it's easier at this point. They're ICE agents. They're left to fend for themselves on the streets of Minneapolis. It's absolutely disgusting. I watched a video where they were coming down with a Bearcat, which is an armored car. They were coming down, and protesters blocked them. And guess who was right there? Minneapolis PD. You know what they did? Absolutely nothing. Somebody sent it to me. I texted them back. You know what I said to them? I said, and if this is what the Minneapolis Police Department's going to be doing, I fully support defund the police. I fully support getting rid of them. I fully support let's start over. Let's come up with something else, because there's no reason that the people in Minneapolis their tax money should be going to this completely ineffective police department, because they're also just as guilty. This incident that you're watching, there were no police there. Why? Why is there chaos on the streets in Minneapolis and the police weren't there to keep order, to keep the streets clear, to keep sidewalks clear, to keep the protesters in order? We don't fight fires, but when there's a fire, we're certainly there to keep order. Why aren't we there to keep order when ICE is around? It's absolutely disgusting. And then you see why they handpick. You see why they pick some people in law enforcement. And look, I'm going to tell you, like, I'm friends with some of you guys, and I like some of you guys, but like I said, I really don't respect most of you guys, because you'll do anything for a paycheck. You'll do anything to stay in the good graces of these politicians and these progressives. And Brian O'Hara is just one of them. John Shell was on social media. I stand with Brian O'Hara. People that never rose to the rank, been in the position. No. What you mean to say is that most of us have a spine, have morals, and want the ability to put our head on the pillow at night, and you don't. You will do anything and say anything you're told to do. You'll go along with any insanity, whether it's on the right or on the left. You don't care. Now that you're retired, you're a right-wing social media activist that has absolutely no idea what you're talking about. When you were on the job, you were a left-wing social media, big blue city, sanctuary city, COVID mandate, defund the police chief. Now in retirement, you're on the other side. See, now that Brian O'Hara is still on the job, he's still that sanctuary city, COVID mandate, defund the police chief. Listen to what Brian O'Hara has to say about this. And this is the ultimate problem in law enforcement. It's the fact of that we've been politicized. Our leadership is completely politicized. And, I was reading recently about the police board, right? In 1890s, NYPD had what was known as a police board. It was four appointed police commissioners. They were politically appointed. And what they did is they oversaw everything: appointments, complaints, policy, everything. And they were appointed bipartisanly. They were appointed, some were Republicans, some were Democrats, so that there was fair representation. And they went away from that because they basically said there was far too much nepotism, far too much political influence. So they decided instead to go to the police commissioner model, which is most departments are using now, where you're just solely appointed by the mayor and beholden to the mayor. And I think that it's actually exasperated that problem of where politics has infected law enforcement, and these jobs are patronage jobs. They're not rewards. Kaz Daughtry has just got appointed to some bullshit job working with ICE, right? And it's garbage. It's like, John Shell's putting his resume out, like throwing bait, like throwing chum, trying to get us to bite. But when you look at it, it's like, dude, those titles weren't earned. They were patronage rewards for political allies. And what men in law enforcement do now is they get themselves in this grift, in this public safety grift. And they're basically, look, I'm willing to do anything. I'll do anything. I'll say anything. Just if there's a department that's willing to have me at the head and pay me a lot of money, I'll do it until I get to the age where I'm going to open up my own consulting firm. And then I'll do and say anything, and I'll write articles for you, and I'll testify, and I'll get up there and lie for you, and I'll do anything you want. I'll do anything you want. Just pay me. And this is the epitome. This guy is the epitome of the reason that, honestly, they should be defunded. This model needs to go ASAP. There needs to be a different form of governing when it comes to policing, because this clearly isn't working. Listen to what this moron says.
Well, I've seen the videos just as thousands of people around the country have, and the videos speak for themselves. I think it's deeply concerning, the things that are being said. This is an individual that was a city resident. It appears that he was present, exercising his First Amendment rights to record law enforcement activity, and also exercising his Second Amendment rights to lawfully be armed in a public space in the city. So I think very obviously there are serious questions that are being raised. And I think the greater issue is, even if there is an investigation that ultimately proves that at the time of the shooting it was legally justified, I don't think that even matters at this point, because there's so much outrage and concern around what is happening in the city.
What do you mean it doesn't matter at this point? You mean the situation on the ground is already, the impression is left?
People have had enough. This is the third shooting now in less than 3 weeks. The Minneapolis Police Department went the entire year last year recovering about 900 guns from the street, arresting hundreds and hundreds of violent offenders, and we didn't shoot anyone. And now this is the second American citizen that's been killed. It's the third shooting within 3 weeks. People have been speaking out, saying that this was going to happen again. And I think everyone is kind of waiting for folks on both sides to come together and just figure this thing out. This is not sustainable. This police department has only 600 police officers. We are stretched incredibly thin. This is taking an enormous toll trying to manage all of this chaos on top of having to be the police department for a major city. It's too much.
So it doesn't matter if it's justified. You know, we can't cooperate with ICE, and we just want more of this. But or what he's really saying is, what he's really saying is not that he can't, that he wants the ability to cooperate with ICE so none of this happens. He's not saying that. What he's saying is that our borders should remain open, like Eric Adams said, like John Shell co-opted, Kaz Daughtry went along with. And he's saying that we should just leave them alone. And hey, maybe we should just naturalize them like Eric Adams, John Shell, and Kaz Daughtry wanted to, and make them working, and then they could put them in the police department. Because that's ultimately what he's saying, is that America shouldn't enforce its border law, and that he can't work with ICE, and ICE should just get out of here, and they should just leave it alone. This is what he's saying.
Pretty much. And it's funny how, just to pander to politics, he's actually making his situation even worse, because with only 600 officers, those leftists are going crazy over there. Last night there was even more vandalism of that hotel. Okay. Now these guys are emboldened to continue doing that. And what's going to happen is, the more, the less the city tells people to back off, okay, and to stop escalating the situation, the more this is going to happen in that city. And he doesn't have cops. He doesn't have enough cops to do anything about this. Okay. So, as we said before, this situation is just inviting more escalation, and what's going to happen is the National Guard is going to be called into there. And I said it online that I think it's only a matter of maybe weeks at this point before the Insurrection Act is called by Trump. And then what are you going to have in that city? You're going to have martial law. Okay. So this guy isn't doing himself any favors, nor is he doing the residents of Minneapolis any favors right now.
Two flash points I want to discuss here. First, John, I think you hit the nail on the head. So I've been analyzing Minnesota, especially Minneapolis, trying to figure out what's the apparatus there, why this is always the centric focus of moving the needle with chaos. I always say the country is seeking for the next George Floyd, and somehow they find it in Minneapolis twice, right? The second one was on a white woman. And I think you're right, John. I think this city has done a great job with recruiting complete cucks to run the police department that's completely emasculated. So the police department is so emasculated, and I always say it, law enforcement is the most tangible form of government. So you're able to rip down government in Minneapolis because you have a weak police department. Brian O'Hara comes from New Jersey, which is a liberal state as it is. Brian O'Hara is a complete cuck. He has experience on law enforcement in New Jersey. He knows exactly what you're supposed to do and what you're not to do. But they found the guy, they recruited him, who was willing to play the game. And Brian is playing the game. And you know what that game is? We often talk about this often, right? I believe even the Executive Perspective did a whole show about this. Policy in comparison to optics. what's more important? That's what he told you. Optics is more important. He said it doesn't matter that it's justified. How does it? Even the reporter asked, what do you mean it doesn't matter? What he told you is optics is more important than policy. The optics overrides policy. Policy we disregard. So here's the message. If you're in law enforcement right now, if you're a Minneapolis police officer, Brian O'Hara just told you that even if you take action and you're justified, if the optics does not fit the agenda or fit the narrative, which we often talk about, that happens in New York City also, you're shit down a river. You got some problems because this guy's not going to back you up. He's going to back up the optics. So if you're in Minneapolis right now, you need to find yourself a new place to work, a new home, because that's what's happening here. Optics now overrides policy. Thank you very much to this cuck over here.
I personally think, you know, it's a great job if you don't want to do anything. I mean, if you just want to go to work, put your uniform on, make a lot of overtime, I think it's a great job, you know, like that, like, because they're not, look at what's happening here, dude. So what you don't see is behind this camera, there's dozens of cops in riot gear, right? So let's just play this video and watch how the police department doesn't react to it. I mean, it just shows you, like, they're definitely, they're 100% responsible for what's happening here, because they're allowing these situations to escalate. Now, you already see that they're driving down the block and someone already threw a metal garbage can under the truck, but it's a Bearcat. It's got a high, you know, it's jacked up. It's elevated, so it's still able to drive. It's in an armored truck and they're coming down, right? Watch what happens now. So when you look in the background over here, there's cops right here. These people took over the street, set up barriers to stop them, and the cops are just standing there watching this. Watch this. Now they're going to start surrounding the vehicle. Look at this right here. What are they doing? What are they being paid for? Is it assisting ICE to keep order? Is it assisting ICE to keep streets free and clear so that emergency vehicles could get through? Is it assisting ICE to help those businesses and those residents from having to deal with insanity and keeping those people off the streets and orderly? Is that assisting ICE? I mean, look, they do absolutely nothing. And they're almost allowing it, like, they're not even protecting this. We could easily be ran over too. I mean, look at that.
Juju, did you miss the first part of this when we talked about how both Obama and Clinton are kind of riling up the left, okay, and riling up these people right now and encouraging these people to do that? Did you miss that part? Okay. You know, you have two choices in the election, okay? And when both choices are seemingly working for the same chaos, to the same end game of chaos, what choice have you got? Okay. So we know you're entwined with the Democrats and the whole political machine with your nice gig in academia, okay? But let's be realistic here. But these people, again, you see that this is what's happening. The more these people on the left over there are riling things up, and the more we get poor policy from the right, is the more of these people you're going to see on the streets, the more protests, the more rioting, and they want this in every city now. And thank God we have at least the weather on our side to kind of delay it a bit. But it's what you're looking at is probably what's going to happen in the spring in New York and all the other major cities.
Listen, I think that I think right now we come to a boiling point with ICE, Border Patrol, law enforcement on the streets. I think that you're right. I think we're at a tipping point, Marlon. I think that eventually the National Guard is going to have to step in. They're untrained, but they put into a situation that with the train that they have just doesn't meet the train that they need on the streets with the local law enforcement type of work. So eventually the National Guard is going to have to step in because people are just really trying to control the direction of where ICE moves in. And I think they want this chaos, right? And I think the left and the right, they're both enjoying the fact that it is becoming chaotic. And unfortunately, lives are being lost. And it's terrible. And yes, it's justified. Is it terrible? Is it tragic? Yes, but people are putting themselves in harm's way. This is absolutely insane what we're watching right now in the streets. I mean, I watch this video. It's like, is that really America? It's like one of those videos you'd watch as a kid, like crazy on TV, something that would happen in another country, but not here. The streets of America are decimated at this point. It's just something that we're not familiar with, but we better get used to this because this looks like this is the new reality, especially in blue cities in this country where local law enforcement is pitted against federal law enforcement. Federal law enforcement is put into a position that they're fighting this war on illegal military age males, and people are protesting, but some of these people, they don't even know why they're involved. And that's why I said clearly, when you look at the case of like Preddy, we're talking about Preddy. To me, after watching the video several times, I do believe that Preddy was wrong. I mean, I think it was stupid, but people are not analyzing what happened in that incident. They're talking about how he was a caring person, a good person. That may be all true, but two things can be true at the same time. He may be a fantastic person, a nurse, helping people, but in this particular incident, he put himself in a situation by intervening with the police and law enforcement, federal, ICE, or Border Patrol, or police. And in that situation, they're policing and they're doing patrol functions. And him getting involved in trying to impede, he put his life at stake. So while he may be a caring person at this moment, he lacked judgment, and it was frankly, it was stupid.
Yep. All right. Anything else on this shooting? I got last topic, and then we'll get out of here for the day.
No, I think we covered it well. Like
Absolutely.
we said, you got to look. You got to take a nuanced position in this and look at the entire situation and make a call on that.
Yeah, well, I think the bottom line is you're playing roulette when you put yourself in these positions with law enforcement. And what it shows also is that these anti-police advocates throughout the entire country, they actually have a lot more faith in the police, because if you really thought the police were that deadly, you wouldn't put yourself in any of those situations. I mean, John, you talk about it, Ballin. I don't get pulled over often, but as a former cop, if I do get pulled over, I'm nervous. Like you said, John, even if I don't have a gun, I'm like, I let the guys, I don't know their tolerance. I let them know my hands are here. Listen, what do you need? Just want you to feel comfortable. I'm scared too, because I don't know how much training they have, what their tolerance is, and I know that sometimes, we're different, right? I've been in states that are kind of rural, and they weren't used to kind of like fast talking New Yorker, and I don't get pulled over often, but I did get pulled over, and I saw some of the guys get jumpy, get nervous because it's different, right? In New York, you talk very fast, you talk with your hands, and I realized, man, I got just got to make sure that I'm careful here, because you don't know. Be careful out there. This is life or death.
Yeah, you don't know what kind of cop or law enforcement agent you're encountering. You don't know how well they're trained and how they're going to react to it. Quick example. Sometimes when you've done like a almost like a 17-hour tour, 18-hour tour, and you get in your car, you're tired, and the firearm, which I used to hold on the like kind of my side, but a little towards the back, it gets uncomfortable in the car,
Yeah. So
now, but here's something. some guys like to just take out the gun and just leave it in the Senate console, you know, and that's not a good idea because you don't know if you're gonna get pulled over by a highway or somebody or state troopers on the highway because you're speeding to get home. And the thing is, you're law enforcement, but if the guy peeks in the car when he's doing the car stop, he's gonna see the firearm there, and you never know. He may just draw his firearm point, and you may have a gun in your face, you know. So the point I'm trying to make here is, you got to be prudent, you know. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. You need to think, and it's something that it's prudence and something people should always keep in mind, you know.
John, before you get the coffee and
Especially
donuts, I just got to read this comment. So that's stupid as it gets. Big Hamza says, Eric, you're a white man in America. You're safe. That is the biggest bullshit. Let me tell you right now. I don't get pulled over often, but in those instances I got pulled over, I tell you right now, the cop didn't give a shit if I was white or black. I could tell that they were nervous because of, being a New Yorker and talking fast. No, it has nothing to do with white or black. That's absolutely ridiculous. But let's get the coffee and donuts. That's so
First of all, what are we even talking about? The guy that we're talking about, the video we just dissected was a white guy. Are you stupid?
Right, exactly.
What was Renee Good? Was she a black man? What was she? Like, seriously? And look, we got a little woke NYPD cop, little soft guy here too, Nico Wabbit. You guys are so hurt in your individual ways by the NYPD and their politics that you just can't say that these guys are effing idiots. Harm's way, so the agents are harmed. Glad y'all aren't cops anymore. Let me explain to you something that you drive around and waste and put a uniform on and waste gas and taxpayer funds. You get overtime for absolutely nothing. Let me explain. You know why you're glad? Because you would have to do your fucking job if we were still on there. That's why. Because you know what? ICE wouldn't be in harm's way. Nobody would be attacking ICE. The streets and the sidewalks would be clear. And these little leftists wouldn't be doing everything they want while you stand there and scratch your ass. That's why you're happy we're not cops anymore, because you would have to be a cop if you had to deal with any of us. You would actually have to do your job. Your handcuffs would actually be able to turn instead of getting rusted, and you'd have to look like you actually were a cop at one point in your life, and you'd have to understand the law and understand your job. So, yeah, you should be happy that we're not cops anymore, because if we were, then you would have to be one too. It's fucking
spot on.
Kids, honestly, it annoys the shit out of me. They can't hear. They don't even know what we're talking about, and they're on the job. Like, it really bothers me, dude. It's like, you have no business. Every day you make it home from work, it was a lucky day. You should all be, whatever God you believe in, you should thank him every day, because it has nothing to do with the tactics you're deploying out there, what you're learning, what you're doing out there. You're literally standing out there going, I'm going to be okay. Everything's okay. Like, the morons. Last thing before coffee and donuts. I think, Detectives Endowment Association. Let's just talk about, when we want to talk about politics infecting law enforcement, let's just listen to this real quick, because this is insane. This just infuriates me, because this is such bullshit. Listen to this.
Katz and Cosby, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Well, joining us now, we have Scott Monroe. He is head of the Detectives Endowment Association. They hosted a big event with more than 20. Well, you represent more than 21,000 members, but you had all these different unions meeting this week, talking about essentially how tough it is in law enforcement right now, with law enforcement under attack in so many different directions.
Yes, we did. We had a nice meeting yesterday. We had about 80 to 90 different unions. We had about 400 people in the room. We're all through New York State. We brought in people from Buffalo. Buffalo came in, Buffalo PBA, all the way out to the Hamptons.
So what's the message, Scott?
Well, we want people to know that we're going to have a voice, law enforcement. And I want to be personally, when I took over here in the union, I want to be proactive. I don't want to have to react on something. So I want the politicians to understand, along with the rest of these unions, that we will have a say in this next election, in any election that's going on in New York State, and that we're going to work together, whether you are in corrections, whether you're in the PBA, the DEA, or the CEA, that we're all going to work together, and our vote is going to count.
Yeah, 100%. It's amazing. By the way, I was looking at this, that's sort of the New York State Public Safety Alliance. And you had a whole bunch of so many different groups from all these different divisions. Obviously, you folks from Suffolk County, you mentioned Buffalo, the Correction Officers Benevolent Association. To me, the disrespect that law enforcement has had against them is extraordinary. And you know, I grew up in a home where it was appreciating our men and women in blue. And a community has to stand together with you. And I'm glad you guys, it's power in numbers, because we'd be nowhere if suddenly you guys said, forget it. We're going to, you know, turn our backs and not enforce the law. And what's the message?
Absolutely. Well, the message is that we have 500,000 votes in that room, regardless whether you're active or retired. The last election in 2022, the governor election, was decided on 5%, a little over 200,000 votes. And we had that in that room yesterday. And everybody is going to stay in touch. We're going to do Zooms going forward. We're going to watch what's going on. And listen, don't let us be wrong. I mean, Governor Hochul did a lot of good retainment bills for us last year up in Albany, but we got to keep going. And that's why we had Buffalo there, our hometown, and we had Nassau County there. Bruce Blakeman, his people were there, and we're all discussing it. And listen, we will have a say in law enforcement. I will tell you that.
And by the way, what happened with those detectives, the New York City detectives, Scott Monroe? That story that they.
All right, we don't even need to go any further in this, but like, look what he's saying. He's saying we have 500,000 votes. So let's clear something up. There is no way in hell that the DEA and all those unions aren't going to come out in full-fledged support of Hochul. They're going to come out in full-fledged support of Hochul. He already alluded to it when he said, oh, she got some bills passed for us here. Let me tell you something. How many of those 500,000 votes you think are going to vote for Kathy Hochul? Let me tell you, about 4%. So he doesn't have 500,000 votes. He has the logo and he's got the funds, but he doesn't have the rank and file. And it's the same is true for every other single union when it comes to police. They go Democrat. The majority of their members overwhelmingly go Republican. So he does not have those votes. That's a bunch of bullshit, Scott. And this is political theater. This is all theater. Just come out and endorse Hochul already. I'm sick of watching it. It's gross. I haven't even really been calling you out, but I'm going to start. I'm going to start because this shit's pissing me off, man. It really is. It's disgusting. We're going to have our vote. You have no voice. You're getting pulled around like a lackey around the yard. Same way that Trump had Eric Adams holding his pocket and you were holding Eric Adams' pocket while he walked around the yard. Now you're holding Hochul's pocket while you're getting walked around the yard. It's disgraceful. Your members don't support it. Like I said, you got the funds, you got the logo, but you don't have the membership. And you damn sure don't have their votes either.
Yeah. Rob, you are spot on this. He, when you talk to him too, he also sounds like he's a mob boss, huh? But it's funny how many times he talks about that he's working on something, he's doing something. He told me that when I first spoke to him too. And what has he been doing since? I think, you listen, you have a overwhelming progressive city that the government itself in New York City is progressive too, and they've told you many times they don't like cops. Okay, I think you need to take baby steps there. Okay, and the first step is to actually speak out about incidents like what happened in NYU Langone to those detectives. You got to start small before we try to play kingmaker here. Okay, and if you don't have if the DEA doesn't have the courage to challenge the city in small pieces, small bites, and they challenge these things, then what hope have we that you're going to fight you're going to go up against these state politicians and you're going to play kingmaker? Then I don't get it. Like, what's the point?
Well,
I think.
No.
Just to finish up, I think this is just more gaslighting to keep us like docile and think they're actually working for us.
Yeah, you're right. It is gaslighting. You know why? Because I seen the same thing. As an LBA delegate, SBA delegate, I would go to these meetings. Pretty much, I realized I was just the liaison. That's all you are as a delegate. And I would hear at these meetings that we have to vote for this Democrat or this Democrat because we don't have any friends in Albany. And that was always the ideology. Like, vote for this Democrat because you don't have any friends in Albany. So clearly, John's right. He alluded to the fact that Hochul had already helped them out on some proposed bills. So he pretty much foreshadowed that they're going to endorse Hochul again. And Hochul is completely anti-police. I don't see anything that she did that's in favor of the police. Not at all. I mean, where is this tier 2A that the NYPD is waiting for? Because the fire department got it, but not the NYPD. But I saw it with Lou Turco and the LBA. I saw it with the SBA. You know, let's push this Democrat because we don't have any friends in office. But that's what's come down to the ideology. But like John says, most of them live in Long Island, so it won't affect them anyway when it comes to New York City politics. But as far as New York State, you have to ask yourself, why would they want Hochul for governor? How does it work for the unions? What kind of kickback do they get? What benefit does it make the unions? Because clearly it doesn't help the members. I am very disappointed. You know, I speak to Scott Monroe often. We've had some great conversations. I'm disappointed that they're foreshadowing that they're going to endorse Hochul. It's absolutely insane. She's completely anti-police. There's no emotion there. She could care less about the police. She is, you know, we talk about being the king of bail reform, which was Andrew Cuomo. You could arguably say that the queen of bail reform is Kathy Hochul, because she's the one that feels that bail reform was taken care of and everything's fine.
You know, and that's the thing that really bothers me, you know, like when we talk about like releasing cop killers. So her lieutenant governor is running against her, Antonio Delgado, right? And he was sitting down with a cop killer. Like, he had a cop killer at some forum and he gave him the floor and the microphone. And I don't know what the guy said. I didn't listen to it. I don't care. But the bottom line is this. So I'm like, oh, when did that cop killer get released? Oh, he got released in 2020. Who was the lieutenant governor at the time when that guy got released? Oh, Kathy Hochul. Who'd she work for? Andrew Cuomo. Their parole board that her and Cuomo put together released 43 cop killers. And you have unions kissing her ass. You know, and I know the PBA didn't seem to be a part of this whole little the charade that Scott's putting together, but they're just as guilty. They're up in Albany. They're going to Somos, kissing all the Democrats' ass. Look, again, the only thing you have at this point is your name, and you're giving it away like cheap whores. You're giving it away, and then you're going to pretend like you're in the political arena. You ain't in nothing, bro. You're not in nothing. You don't have 500,000 votes. 98% of that membership is going to vote directly against you. How do I know that? What am I basing that on? I'm basing it on the poll that you did. The poll that showed 94% of your members wanted to vote for Donald Trump, and you were too scared not only to not endorse him, you were too scared to even put it out because you didn't want your master, Kathy Hochul, to be mad. Right? So that's how I know that. You don't have those votes. All you got's your name, and you're giving it away like a cheap whore. And that's why police continue to get abused. That's why the unions continue to get abused. It ain't all about pay, bro. And we all know it. Maybe it's all about pay for you and you're bored. Maybe for the rest of the unions too, because you're all older guys. You're all on the move. But it ain't about pay. You're destroying the profession and the department and the city and the state that you guys claim to care about. You're destroying it. It's your fault.
Yeah. Well said, John.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah.
Let's listen. 2 hours and 30 minutes into it. Thank you, everyone. Friends, listeners, like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate it. This is real conversation. We're giving real opinion, and we're giving you Supreme Court case facts. And the bottom line is we have to be honest with these things. And I think for the most part, we give a fair assessment for law enforcement. This is not a hoorah that law enforcement is always right. We gave you the good and the bad, and we have to be honest with this situation. Let's jump into the coffee and donuts.
Crazy 10-7. He says, it's a lily white place where people were too nice, were way too comfortable for way too long, and feel good about it. Minnesota. So he was alluding to what you said earlier, like why Minnesota? Why is all this stuff happening there? It's happening all over the country. Why all these prolific incidents? I mean, I agree. I mean, you know, I laugh, you know, I laugh. Like, I look at people in Vermont and Maine and how liberal they are and shit. And everyone's like, why are they so liberal? I'm like, because they live a nice life. It's like when, you know, I notice a couple of things. My friends, once they get into like a certain status of money, they start to get real liberal, you know, and like, or if they live in a real nice spot, they get real liberal. For me, I'm surprised I'm not a liberal right now because I've been living in a real nice spot. But I'm just not. I think it was just because of all the shit that I've experienced on the job. But I've noticed that it's always those places that those people are the most liberal because they don't have to deal with the reality of the bullshit that they push.
Yeah, I don't know, John.
Good
You
point.
keep drinking that mushroom coffee, and it's dangerous. But yeah,
John, he may make a turn, right, Mullen?
yeah. You know what's strange? Also, the fact that this liberalism is in a place that's as cold as it is. That's like the California. I'm always puzzled by how California liberalism has spread to the rest of the country into blue states that are in cold climates. Because things aren't as easy in California. Things are a whole lot easier. It's basically 70 degrees all year round. And it's just different when you're in a urban area that's in a cold climate environment. Life is just a little bit tougher there. And for them to become so liberal is something that really just confuses me. But yeah.
All right, what's the next one we got? All right, the Smith, baby, Mike Smith. He says New York hires the low of the low.
Mike's always positive.
I'm not knocking anybody, but Mike's always got some good super chat. Hits
He does.
4 individuals to represent the once great NYPD. Also, Scott Monroe is full of shit. DEA just wants its free steak dinners. I mean, I think that about sums it up.
Yeah, Mike Smith, how you doing, brother? Thank you.
Yeah, hysterical.
Good man right there. Good cop.
Good man. And then what do we got? We got Modern Samurai. Morning, gents. Speaking out about current events is always tough, but these conversations are required to come together as a country and a people. Everyone stay safe. I totally agree, and I think that's what we're doing. And and again, I don't care about anybody else's opinion. I don't get butthurt over your opinion. I just think don't speak like you're informed when you're not. You know what I mean? Don't pretend. Come at it hey, look, I don't know. I never been in this situation. I'm not really fully even aware of their law, but this is what I think. And I got no problem with that. That's America. Like I said, in America, for a healthy society is a society where we're in constant debate, and that's just what we need to be at,
Well said, brother. Well said. That's right.
All right. Anything else? Anybody got anything else?
There's no more coffee and donuts. That's it.
That's it, people. That's
all
it.
All right, we're going. Hey, listen, tax season's coming soon, so it's so good. What do you got? A cigar there? We got a sport coat too. We going to a meeting?
That's it, baby. Big things.
Wow.
Big things.
Big things going on here.
Yeah,
you know what? Marlon, he's got his sport coat on. He's got his mushroom coffee. He's not smoking a cigar. He might be a liberal real soon. You know what, John? Maybe these advocates are right. You are an anti-police hating, racist. Look at him.
I drove in a Tesla the other day.
Did you? Oh man, your life is going shit.
Yeah, I was out on my golf cart yesterday.
Are you walking a terrier too?
You
walk a little terrier?
I have a doodle, bro. A doodle, like a real liberal.
I got a bird. Well, listen. You're doing it. Listen, 2 hours and 32 minutes into it. Thank you, everyone. Like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate you with the Finest Unfiltered. Of course, we'll be back Wednesday. You got the executive perspective on Wednesday night, but don't forget tomorrow, if you haven't tuned in yet, hell of a cast of characters, 10-4 Tavern. Tom and Pete, they're doing a hell of a job. I'm really impressed. They put this platform on a national level. They have a cast of characters from the entire country, law enforcement all over the place. So, please, stay with us. Check this out. And the executive perspective is doing a hell of a job. Rob should be back this week. Rob took a hiatus. I don't know who authorized that, but we're all good.
Yeah, and just if you guys, this weekend, January 31st, Donald J. Trump Republican Club out of Kings County, they're hosting their gala. you know, you could get tickets online at the event. You know, it's constantly posted on the DJT social medias. I usually repost it often too. Fortunately, I'm not going to be able to make this one, but it's cocktail hour starting at 5:30 at the Dyka Beach Golf Club on 86th Street. So fine dining, entertainment. There's going to be a lot of people there, a lot of speeches. Yeah, and so definitely check it out. Like I said, I'm a member. I'm a big fan of the DJT gala. So check it out. You know, I'm sorry I'm not going to make this one, but there's going to be a lot of great people there. So check it out.
Yeah, and be prepared for the use of force test for the NYPD is now going to be involved with a raccoon. So it used to be shoot the dog, now it's going to be shoot the raccoon. Anyway, to those cops out there, I think you did a good job. You did what you had to do with the tools that you have. There's really no training for it, so you know, have some fun. I'm sure they'll put some raccoons on your locker. You took care of Pookie, so be good out there.
Yeah, Ma, anything before we run?
No. Thank you guys for joining us. Actually, KB, I saw your comment in the chat, and you are correct about like Minneapolis, very artsy town, and you know, especially in the 80s, you know, they had a big, massive like music movement in the 80s over there. But maybe that's why. Maybe it's because they're so artsy. It's why they're being targeted. Maybe it's easy. That's an easy in to manipulate the you know, the progressives over there. But yeah, thank you for joining us, guys. We appreciate you as always. We appreciate the lively chat, including you haters. You know, we appreciate you you doing what you do. You know, but I'll see you guys on Friday, and have a great day. And don't shovel too hard. You know, don't go crazy out there.
And just remember, raccoon lives matter. So, all right, people, we're out of here. Finest Unfiltered. We'll be back at you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?